like to call to order this meeting of the Peabody City Council Finance Committee. Present for the committee this evening are Councilors Gamache, Gould, Manning Martin, and Turco, and myself, Councilor McGinn, as chair. Also present this evening are Councilors Welton, Peach, Daigle, O'Neill, and Council President Melville. We have several items on the agenda tonight. First item on the agenda, Ordinance Amendment, Peabody Museum Department. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to all the council. It's great to be here with all of you and hope everybody's doing well. Very excited to be here today. This has certainly been a long time project that we've been discussing in the city for a number of years. And before I begin, I did want to make some introductions. There'll be a few speakers today. We're going to try to keep it brief. I think a lot of you know the history of the Children's Museum and what has brought you here today. And but we do have some information to provide, and certainly ready, willing, and able to answer any questions that you have for us. But I wanted to introduce, we have our Community Development Director, Kurt Bellavance here, our Finance Director, Mike Gingras, our City Solicitor, Don Kahn, the members of the group that have been working on the Children's Museum, particularly over the last couple of years. We have Camille Bartlett, Martha Holden, Tim Brown, and we also have Mark Whiting here today, who really kind of started and planted the seed for this project. So a number of us will be speaking. I wanted to open things up and say a few words before we turn it over to some of our speakers. But I mentioned that this has been a project that has long been discussed and talked about. It was interesting as I was kind of reviewing my notes to get ready. We had our very first meeting on this project on November 13th, 2014. So it's been over 7 years. And at that meeting was Pete McGinn, Tom Gould, Martha Holden, myself, and Karen Sawyer, our former Community Development Director. And that meeting started because of an idea or a thought that Mark Whiting had. All of you know Mark as the general manager at the North Shore Mall. He had mentioned, he's very familiar, lives up in the Dover, New Hampshire area, that they have a children's museum up in Dover, New Hampshire. And it's been a great success. It's been kind of in the heart of their downtown and has really been an anchor for that whole area. And he talked about Dover's relationships with Portsmouth, like kind of our relationship here in Peabody is with Salem. So a number of us, some of the members here, went and took a trip up to Dover, New Hampshire to take a tour of the Children's Museum. And it solidified to me what I thought would be just a great addition to the city of Peabody. We spent a couple of hours there touring the facility, walking around, checking out the neighborhood, some of the stores that popped up around the Children's Museum. And it was really, again, a great meeting that really brought to life some of the things that I hope for this museum. And I've been enamored with the idea since then. I've always believed that it could be a great success, seeing what it did in Dover, and I just think it can work here in the city of Peabody. It would provide an anchor for our downtown. I think all of us have really seen the downtown make some very positive steps, still more work to do, but very positive steps in bringing people to our downtown, filling up a lot of those vacancies that had existed for a number of years with some shops and restaurants. And I just really felt that this could be a great addition and would be a benefit to all of those shops and restaurants, because the Children's Museum, like it did in Dover and like it's done in Fall River and some other places, brings people to the downtown to go to the shops, to go to the restaurants. That's the idea here. There will be no food on site. We will not be preparing food or selling food. We want the Children's Museum to build a relationship with all the area restaurants. All of them can benefit greatly, I think, from having the Children's Museum and being able to utilize those shops and restaurants in the area. For a number of years, we were looking at different locations, looking at different iterations as to how this could work, how to best have this as part of our community. I've always believed, and certainly I'm speaking for all of our group, that it needed to be and should be in our downtown to really provide that, again, another anchor for our downtown area. We looked at some other locations across the city, and it just didn't seem to have that same feel or that same magic that I think it could provide to us in our downtown. I wanted to recognize certainly the work of Peabody Main Streets. They've been trying to work on our downtown and bring life to our downtown for years now, and they put a great deal of effort in, our Chamber of Commerce, and just our downtown businesses. I haven't come forward with a lot of letters and things from our downtown businesses. I certainly could have. I can't say that I spoke to one person who had anything negative to say in our downtown area. Parking comes up certainly, and that'll be an issue we have to work on if this moves forward. But certainly in terms of bringing people to our downtown to help restaurants and shops, everybody was very excited about that. But ultimately, this is a risk. Certainly it is. I think it's a minimal risk. I think we're going to be able to present to you ways that this is going to be successful and how it will work. But it is a risk, and we needed to prove to ourselves, prove to our community, and prove to all of you that this can work. And that's why we did a pop-up Curious City Children's Museum in the year 2019. We had it at the George Peabody House, the Leather Workers Museum, right on Washington Street. Everybody knows where that is. And I wanted to thank and recognize the Peabody Historical Society, the Peabody Historical Commission, for allowing us the use of that property for that period of time. Now, originally we were supposed to start out as a 3 or 4 month process. We were going to try it over a 3 or 4 month period. Because of the great success, we did it for 1 full year, from March 2019 to March of 2020. And it was just a great success, beyond our wildest expectations, beyond what we had really hoped for. Martha Holden will be coming up shortly and kind of giving more information as to the success of the Pop-Up Children's Museum. I can tell you right now that I know of 2 other communities that are looking at a children's museum for their cities because they haven't seen movement on our front. I've been talking about it at every public event I could. 1, because I still believe in this, and 2, I wanted to put on notice that to other communities that this is very real for the city of Peabody, and is very real and has brought us here tonight. I want this for our downtown. I want this for our city. I want this for our children, our neighborhoods, our residents, our families. I believe that this could be a great success. And the success we had at the Pop-Up Children's Museum has convinced us more so than ever that this will work. I wanted to ask briefly to have Mark Whiting come up and say a couple of words, and then I'm going to turn it over to our team of Martha Holden, Camille Bartlett, and Tim Brown, and I think they may have a few words for themselves. So, Mark, did you want to say a couple words?
Thank you, Ted. Good evening. This might be somewhat shocking that I'm here not to speak on behalf of the mall. But the 2 stories are somewhat interrelated. When I started at the mall 25 years ago, I certainly wouldn't have expected to see an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a slide and an electric car dealership in my parking lot. And, you know, the story of the mall is one of constant transformation as we struggle to remain vital. And, you know, I think that same spirit certainly applies to the downtown. And, you know, there's a synergy that should exist between the downtown of Peabody and the mall itself. And we benefit from each other's growth and traffic and development. And from that, I kind of started thinking about what I had seen happen in Portsmouth, where I used to live, where they had a beautiful children's museum, spectacular. And when Portsmouth was kind of just coming up far from what it is today, people really embraced the museum. People came from all over the seacoast during the week and weekends to visit the museum. And as Portsmouth grew and developed and became more quote-unquote sophisticated, the need for the museum was lost on many that lived in the city. And eventually, the museum lost its lease, and they had to find a new place to go. And as I was just saying to Dave, they found a great spot that some of you were lucky enough to visit in Dover a number of years ago, 8 years ago. I'm blown away that this has been going on this long. But they found an old armory on the river, and Dover's a mill town, very similar to Peabody, similar story. And they were able to repurpose this beautiful brick armory into the Dover Children's Museum, which has created an amazing amount of draw, not just from the seacoast, but throughout the entire region. The museum is dramatic. It's transformative itself. The exhibits, typically stay in place for about a year, sometimes more than that. A lot of the exhibits are sponsored by local businesses, For instance, they have a whole exhibit on banking that's, sponsored by a local bank. And so, it's easy for the museum to somewhat self-sustain because they're able to find tremendous local interest because the museum draws just a tremendous amount of traffic and interest from young families throughout the region. I think the downtown of Peabody is a perfect fit for a similar concept. And I know Martha and Camille and others will talk about the success that was achieved through the pop-up. But if we're talking about, luring, attracting new young families to Peabody, if we're talking about bringing business, restaurants, strong retail opportunities to downtown, you have to create, in a sense, that catalyst that creates traffic and interest where other towns, other cities aren't able to do that. The Children's Museum, from my perspective, is absolutely that opportunity. And again, talking from someone who has been very involved in the revitalization of a single property and keeping it relevant, keeping it attractive, keeping it fresh, I think I'm surprised, frankly, we don't have more business owners, more downtown landlords here to speak on the museum's behalf, because it's a win-win for everyone, especially young families and children here in Peabody and throughout the region. So that's all I've got. Thank you all very much. And I have to say thank you for all your support on my previous initiatives as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whiting.
Hi, it's nice to see you all again.
Martha, if you could just give your name
Can you?
for the
Yes.
record.
Martha Holden, 99 Linfield Street. After our trip to Dover, we continued our conversations about the Children's Museum, and rather vaguely, I think, for several years. But in 2018, the Peabody Cultural Collaborative agreed to establish a pop-up or a temporary museum to determine the need for a children's museum in Peabody, as well as the desire and the capacity of the region to support the concept. From March 2019 to March 2020, the PCC operated the pop-up museum, as you know, in the location of the George Peabody House Museum on Washington Street, with the purpose of collecting as much data as possible. It was never intended at that time to be a permanent structure. It was just a data collecting exercise. To say that we were impressed by the response of the public is an understatement. We were really, really astounded. Our projections, our initial projections were nearly tripled. Over 42 weeks of programming, we were open from March 2019 to March 2020, but we had a couple of periods of downtime. So over our 42 weeks of programming, we hosted over 9,200 visitors. 78% of the drop-in visitors came from outside of Peabody. People came from 160 communities and from 24 states. One of the most important things we have to consider when we consider a children's museum in Peabody is that we're not the size of community that can sustain the children's museum if we just target Peabody people. This is a regional exercise. 42% of our visitors utilize free options, such as library passes or EBT or WIC cards. The majority of those were library passes that were used from people from other communities. We sold these passes to museums in the nearby networks, libraries in the nearby networks as a subscription. So we can sell passes to different communities so that they can distribute them in their libraries so that their residents have free access to the museum. But we as museum get paid. Adjacent businesses such as Diorcy's and the former Fonts Pizza reported museum-related spikes in sales. We had a great relationship with our local food vendors. Visitors frequently asked about local amenities, parks, restaurants, and other family-related attractions. The desire for and the willingness of the community to support a children's museum were clearly demonstrated. Partners were supportive and enthusiastic. We worked with local businesses, public and private schools, local artists and storytellers, the Northeast Arc funding partners, such as the Leahy Foundation and ECCF, elected officials, and of course the Peabody Institute Library, Peabody TV, the George Peabody House Museum, Peabody Historical Society, and many, many others to build partnerships that can be sustained and expanded as we move to establish a more permanent presence with professional staff and a dedicated facility. I'd like to introduce Tim Brown to talk a little bit more about the possibilities of the Children's Museum in downtown.
Hi, Tim Brown. I'm a member of the Peabody Cultural Collaborative. As Martha said, one of our goals of operating Curious City was infusing customers into the local businesses. The museum was directly located next to Diorsi's and across the street from Font's Pizza. The one hard data point that we were not able to collect was the exact increase in business during our operations for both of those places. But what we did get and receive from them were reports of an increase. During our first break after our 3-month time period, when we announced the continuation of Curious City, a staff person from Font stated that they were thrilled that we were going to continue, that they had noticed an increase in sales corresponding to the days and times that we were open. Anita Diorsi wrote a letter of support for a grant for us. And what she wrote was, as a neighbor to George Peabody Museum, which recently hosted the Curious City Children's Museum, we would like to give a huge shout out to the operators of this event. In addition to the definite uptick in business by hundreds of young families enjoying the activity, we also had the pleasure of meeting and serving the staff running these events. With a move to Main Street, visitors will have even more choices on how to spend their money. In less than 0.2 of a mile of 10 Main Street, there are at least 15 restaurants, cafes, and sandwich shops. I counted them today. Not only will food-related businesses benefit from the museum, but the library and Create and Escape host multiple programs geared for children. They should also expect to have a large insurgence from our audience. Many in this room have come to at least one of the downtown business owners' meetings in the past year or so. A frequent topic of conversation in those meetings is how can we attract a wider, more diverse group of businesses in the downtown area that will encourage people to stay on Main Street. We really believe Curious City can do that. Imagine what Curious City can do. We were a pop-up. We were only scheduled to be in operation for 3 months. We created 2 more extensions of our time. Over 9,200 people visited the Curious City. And this was a museum that did not have a strong marketing plan. Because we were a pop-up, we did not reach out as far and as wide as we could to advertise this building. So imagine an ongoing museum, a strong marketing plan, and thousands of visitors with children coming onto Main Street on a regular basis. Imagine how much easier it would be for us to encourage other children-themed retail businesses to view Main Street as an ideal location, and then what that will do for the other storefronts in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I wanted to thank Martha and Tim and Camille as well. She was a little too shy to speak today, but they've just been amazing. We've been meeting a couple times a month now for several months, really to try to hammer this, to put this together, and and I'm just very appreciative of their work. Again, just pure voluntary work, just trying to help our community. You may have seen last week we put out a short video trying to talk about some projects that we're working on in the downtown. I wanted to play now just a clip of that, Mr. Chairman. We took out just a clip on specific to the Children's Museum, and I wanted to just ask if we could move forward and play that. It's about a little over 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
Prior to the pandemic, the Curious City Pop-Up Children's Museum opened its doors at the George Peabody House on Washington Street. The museum featured innovative play-based exhibits for ages 2 to 10. I've always felt that a children's museum could be a great success here in the city of Peabody. It could be part of our long-term future for our downtown. But to make this investment, we needed to prove to ourselves and to the community that this could be a success.
After 9.5 months of running events in that temporary space, we had over 9,200 visitors. About 80% of the people who came were from outside of Peabody, which is really important because when you have a project of this magnitude, for sustainability, you really need to draw from a larger geographical area.
We saw with the pop-up that people were taking advantage of both of the restaurants adjacent to Curious City. Having it in the downtown should be a driver to all the restaurants in the area.
This fall, city attorneys and I negotiated a lease agreement for 10 Main Street to be the permanent home of the Peabody Children's Museum. I wanted to take a moment to kind of give a little sneak peek of what we're going to be looking at here in the Children's Museum. This is the entry, and as you see, this is a pretty wide open space. To be the entry point, we have a couple of rooms that we envisioned for to put clothes and carriages and maybe sell some items over here. And it sets up perfectly over in this area where we have 8 office cubicles that we were going to be able to put some exhibit space here. There's some additional office space that we could potentially utilize for birthday parties. I think this would be a great location for all of that. And we've already received a number of inquiries from schools and camps about the Children's Museum and the timing of it. And I think we're going to get a great response from people. But I think it's excellent space, again, in the heart of our downtown, and really sets up nicely for what we're looking to do here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council. So COVID halted our momentum. We ended in March of 2020. Everybody remembers March of 2020. That's when the world changed and everything was set back for all of us. We've been fighting our way through the last couple of years. But it halted our momentum, but it did provide a great opportunity for us in terms of the location that we're presenting today, the 10 Main Street. Everybody knows that's the TD Bank property. It had been TD Bank for decades. They had closed down their operations about a year ago and put the property out for sale. Viceroy Capital purchased the property. I think you're familiar with Viceroy. Viceroy purchased the large portfolio of property in the downtown that was originally owned by Northfield, and then before that was owned by Arthur Gordon. So they've been now running those properties for a number of years, and they've been doing a good job with that and been working with the city. I do have today from Viceroy the principals, Carl Valeri and Sandra Capo are in the back. They're here. When we first reached out to them about this possibility, they were interested right from the start. They had purchased the property in August. It was August 10th of 2021, so a couple of months before we actually started speaking. And they were looking at different options, looking at dividing up the area, the 7,500 square feet on the first floor, into maybe 2 or 3 shops. And I believe they certainly could have gotten more rent than what we have agreed to in our proposal if they did subdivide it into smaller lots. But I think they were very interested in the concept, interested in the idea, wanted to work with the city, and they felt it would have great benefit for their properties across the city as well. We negotiated a lease. It took significant time, kind of working through a number of issues to make sure it made sense for both parties to do that. We talked about a long-term lease, but ultimately we decided on a 5-year lease. And the reason for that is because I do believe this is going to be a success. Certainly the people that I've been working with do. But it might not work. And I felt a 5-year lease was appropriate to give us flexibility and to lower our risk that if it doesn't work out, we can get out after 5 years. We do have 5 additional 5-year options, so technically this could be a 30-year lease if things go well, as I expect that they will. But a 5-year lease I thought was appropriate to limit our risk, limit our exposure if things did not work out as anticipated and as planned. For our finances, we have $400,000 as our kind of our nest egg that we have ready to put forward for some startup costs, some expenses that we'll need to invest in. And that's from Community Development Authority. It was unanimously approved by the Community Development Authority. And we have that as our nest egg, $400,000. In addition to that, We have $1.2 million that have been submitted. I believe that letter was in your packet. It has been presented by our state legislators, and it is on the governor's bond bill. We can get an update as to where that money stands from our state legislators, but I know they're working very hard on making that happen. I don't expect that we're going to get a check for $1.2 million. I don't think that's how it works, but I believe that we're going to be getting some funding in the months ahead to help with our costs. As part of the lease, they're required, the landlord, Viceroy, will be putting in a sprinkler system. That has to take place before we certainly can operate, and also they'll be doing some upgrades to the bathrooms to make sure they're handicap accessible and that they're family oriented to make sure that that works for our needs. So that work will be going on. I believe they're ready to go, and that'll work will be taking place very, very soon. The structure of what we anticipate happening over at the Senior Center. I anticipate, or I'm planning on having this operate just as we do at our Senior Center. We have an executive director that oversees the operations, asking today to support the creation of a children's museum department. We anticipate there would be 2 full-time employees. One is the executive director, and then the second is an assistant director, administrative support. We anticipate that being more of an administrative position. That those would be the 2 full-time positions for the Children's Museum, and then the rest of the positions, the remaining positions, would be part-time workers, similar to what we have at the Senior Center. A great deal of the work there is part-time. We would have a board of directors, just as we do at the Senior Center, that meet regularly to discuss policy, to put together their yearly plans, their direction in which they're moving forward, working on budgets, and I anticipate that that will be the same. Senior Center, that is a voluntary position, as it would be for our Children's Museum. I anticipate that it's going to be pretty much the group that's been working on it, plus some additions. We have Martha Holden, Camille Bartlett, Tim Brown, Kurt Bellavance, and I anticipate that there'll be some other members as well, but they would serve as our board of directors. Also, as we have at the Senior Center, we have a Friends committee where they do fundraising. And the Peabody Institute Library does the very same thing, a Friends of group. We would have a Friends of group here. I've already had people reach out. They would like to be a part of that, and they want to assist with fundraising efforts. So it would be, just as we have at the Senior Center, executive director overseeing operations, working with the board of directors to create policy, work on budget, work on daily operations, and work on direction. And then we would have a Friends of fundraising group, fundraising arm that would focus on exploring all opportunities, sponsorships, donations, all of that, which we think there will be many of. In addition to that, Mark Whiting touched on it, as well as our other speakers, but we anticipate significant donations and sponsorship opportunities. I've already had people reaching out, businesses that want to sponsor exhibit space, want to sponsor rooms, and we anticipate that that'll be a big part of this operation. We've had a great number of schools, camps, as I mentioned in the video, already people reaching out that have birthday parties. We really didn't focus on that very much when we did the pop-up, but I think that particularly the birthday parties, all of you have parents or siblings or families and know the hope or the difficulty sometimes in trying to find things to do for your family, particularly the young kids. And I believe this would be a great spot to go and be together as a family. And I believe that birthday parties are going to be a big part of this, as well as camps and schools coming to visit. And I expect field trips to be also a main part of this. I have Mike Gingras here. Mike provided you some pro forma financial information. I want to just have Mike come up and kind of highlight some of the important things that are going to be a part of this plan. Certainly, as I've mentioned, there is some risk here. It's not easy to come forward to create a new department. It's not easy to hire new people. There's always risk associated with that. I think this is a very much a risk that we're prepared for, and through the pop-up, we've been able to prove it's a risk that I believe we can succeed at and overcome. But I wanted Mike Gingras to come up and kind of give an overview of some of the financial aspects.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're looking at the beginning of the
Mr.
project.
Gingras, just a point of information of the committee. We were on item A, but we're kind of bleeding into item B here. So I believe the pro forma is part of item B. Thank you, Mr. Gingras.
Thank you. So within the packet, we put together some pro forma financial information. And initially, we're looking at what kind of budget would this museum need? Would it be 200,000, a million, 500,000? So we put together a preliminary budget, sort of a starting point. With the 2 full-time salaries, use 5 part-time salaries, Medicare taxes, insurance, pension, and it comes out that about $250,000 worth of salaries would be required for initial startup. Then looking at the expense side, we have the building lease, the taxes on the property, utility costs, administrative costs, exhibits, and other operating costs that are coming in around $300,000. So the budget itself is going to total approximately $550,000, which is something that will be continually refined and worked on once the director is put on board. And in addition, some of the funding that's coming from the state or from the Community Development Authority to do some of the initial fit out and exhibits may reduce some of the exhibit costs that are in this pro forma. Then looking at the revenue side, how much revenue could we generate to offset the cost of this $550,000 budget? So we're looking at ticket sales based on the pop-up success, some grants and other funding, individual donations, rentals of the facility for parties, gift shops, concessions, library passes, and that totals about $470,000 in our projection. So we're coming close to be able to offset the cost of the budget to operate the museum. Then with some reasonable amount of growth over a few years, it's conceivable that the revenue generated by the operations could meet or exceed the operating costs and make the operation revenue neutral. Obviously, like the mayor says, this is a risk, but there's potential here. The numbers look like they can pan out in the long run, and it looks like a good opportunity. In addition to the pro forma that I've provided here and the request tonight to adopt the museum department and the positions within the museum department, we'll be coming forward in the future before the museum opens to create a revolving fund, much like we have at Tilly's Farm and Brooksby Farm, to for the monies raised within the enterprise to deposit the money in that revolving fund and utilize those resources for the museum itself. So that's a brief overview of the projections and the intent behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Gingras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mike, for the update. A couple of items I wanted to mention just in terms of the lease that I didn't mention earlier. It's a 5-year lease, as I mentioned. That's the initial term, $15 a square foot. We believe in doing research and checking out comparables in the area, some of the office parks. We believe that is an appropriate number. We anticipate there will be a 3% increase every year, which is pretty standard in talking to people and getting a sense of leases and how they move forward year to year. So I believe this is on par in the range of what our comparables are working off of. Our rental space is 75,000 square feet. A number of you were able to come and see the proposed area, which was terrific. It's 7,500 square feet in full. It's just the first floor that we have the agreement for. There is a second floor, another 2,500 square feet or so that potentially could be used. It's not part of the lease agreement. However, if things go well, we have that opportunity to rent that additional space as well. And I believe in the agreement we have a right of first refusal or a first offer. If somebody was to rent that, they would come to us and discuss that, where we'd have the opportunity to rent it. There's a great deal of space underneath for potential storage opportunities, exhibits, and things of that nature as well. That would be afforded to us, that ability. One other thing that I wanted to mention, actually, just give me a moment.
While the mayor is collecting his thoughts there, this last portion of his comments dealt with item C on the agenda, just for those that are, so these are all, I think we're kind of taking these things in aggregate. But for those that are following along at home, this is A, B, and C on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And again, we've tried to present information to show that this can be a success. It would have been, I think, irresponsible for us to come forward today with this request without a proven track record, without having the success that we had with the Pop-Up Children's Museum. I would not have come forward without having the data, without having the information that we've been able to put together to show that this can work and to be a success. Those items, or the information that Mr. Gingras gave us, that does not include the $400,000 that we have as our nest egg in reserve. That does not include any of the $1.2 million that we anticipate that we'll be getting, maybe not in full again. Not sure exactly how that plays out timing-wise, but there will be money coming to us from the state level as well. We haven't been able to apply for certain grants that we will be able to apply for from the state and federal grants for Children's Museum and other opportunities like this until we have site control. So once we have either the property owned, which we're not going to do, or we have a lease agreement that is executed, we then have the opportunity there to go forward and request and pursue some grants. We don't have that ability now until we have site control, which we're hoping to be able to achieve today. But in addition to that, I believe this could be self-sustaining. Well, also, I believe that this could be profitable in the years ahead. But even more than that, it's going to be an anchor for our downtown. It's really impossible to put a number on the benefit that it will provide those restaurants and shops. Just in that short period of time, you heard from Diorsi's, you heard from Fonts, and there's others too that benefited as well. It's really impossible to put a number on what that would mean for those businesses. But it only makes sense. The more people we bring down, the families, the residents that we have in our city and from across the region that come here, they're going to go to the Children's Museum, and then they're going to go to eat across the street. They're going to go to eat down the street. They're going to go to the shops. That is an important part of why this is important for our downtown, is not only the success to make sure it is self-sustaining and it's not impactful on our taxpayers, which is not something I want at all, but I believe that it's going to benefit greatly those restaurants and shops that have already been struggling, particularly these last 2 years. We've been very fortunate that we haven't lost any restaurant on Main Street, and that has been a testament because of the hard work that people are doing and making it through this pandemic and through these difficult days. And this was only going to help them continue with their continued success. I'm here today asking for approval on 2 items. The first is to amend the ordinance to allow for the creation of a Children's Museum department. Now, the last time I came to the council for such an action was for Tilly's Farm, and it was very similar to the arguments that I'm making today, was the arguments I made years ago with Tilly's Farm. That was brand new. We had to create a department. We had to hire people full-time. We had to make a significant investment to make Tilly's Farm happen, and there was risk affiliated with that. Again, it was a calculated risk because of our success at Brooksby Farm, but Tilly's Farm was a risk at that time. We had to make an investment. We had to put money forward. We had to hire full-time people that were salaried, that were benefited, all of that. Before we made $1, we had to make that vote and hire those people to come forward. And we did it. And Tilly's has been a great success, and it's doing tremendous for our community, and it's brought new life over to that area. Without question, Tilly's Farm has been a success for us. But it took a difficult vote to create a department, to create positions and hire people and make that investment. That's what I'm asking for today with the Children's Museum, that same type of investment as we did with Tilly's Farm. So that is the first action I'm hoping for today. The second action would be to authorize me to sign the lease agreement with Viceroy, that 5-year initial term to allow us to move forward and get started in the work that has to take place there. Happy to answer any questions. Our team is here as well to certainly answer any questions. Very excited about this. I think this can work for our community, and I'm hopeful for the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions from the committee? Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if my question is for you or for Mr. Gingrich, and it involves, so the initial budget is $521,575 for the first year. I believe that's what you have listed in your pro forma. My question is, why do we need to create a department and create city employees? Why couldn't we do exactly what you want to do? And let me preface this with, I love the idea of a children's museum. I think it could work. I appreciate you saying that there is a risk to it, but, you know, I did probably do a little too much research on these things. And, you know, obviously, you know, Boston is extremely successful. Holyoke, Dartmouth, Lowell. Lowell has no paid employees for some reason. Fall River, Berkshire's has since closed. Wilbraham, Worcester, Cape Cod, and Discovery Museum in Acton, which is extremely successful. So there's a mix of, you know, some that have made it and some that are doing really, really well and some that aren't. So, but what they all have in common is they all run under a 501c3, and none of them are city operated. So I'm wondering if there's, we can move forward with this, and rather than add $500,000 to the city budget at the risk of the taxpayers, and albeit, you know, you're right, it's a slight risk. Can we form a 501c3, use the $400,000 seed money through CDA? I think then you'd need to come up with $123,000 in grants for the first year, and you'd be covered to just move forward with this. So, you know, I think you can understand my reluctance with adding $500,000 to the budget. Reason being, you know, I mean, we just took $7.5 million out of Oppa to make up for budget shortfalls over the last 3 years, 2020, 2021, 22. So we're really not fully recovered from the pandemic. I'm doubtful that we will fully recover in the future. You know, you just did a great thing with bringing back the police and fire. We have to see how that works out. And just to, you know, to add additional funding to it when I don't think we have to. I think we can accomplish the same goal without making this a city-run department. And we could also form the museum board, as you said. You know, that's of no cost to us. My issue is just where the funding comes from and putting it to the taxpayer when we really don't have to. So I'm sorry to go on. I'll let you answer the question.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, no, good questions. But first, you read out that list of different children's museums across the state, across the region. What you didn't read was that there is no children's museum in Essex County. And across the region, across the state, there are children's museums. And as you mentioned, Councilor, they have been successful. There is not one in the North Shore in Essex County. I believe that Peabody deserves to be and should be the place, because if it's not Peabody, it will be somebody else coming in. I want to claim Essex County just as others that Councilor Turco read have claimed their area and their region. We did talk about Peabody Cultural Collaborative, who's really been essential with this. And when I mentioned Martha and Camille and Tim and Dee and Healy, who's worked in the past with us, it's the cultural collaboration. The cultural councils have been doing a great deal of the work. We did have discussions about pursuing that and maybe funneling money through Community Development Authority into a 501c3, but I felt a little uncomfortable doing that. I felt, in being full transparency, if it's a city project, if it's a city investment, it should come from the city. Now, this could morph in the years ahead, and we maybe bring on partnerships, or we maybe even look at outside vendors to do this type of work. That's been done as well with some of the others that I've spoken to. But we just didn't feel like it quite fit with what we were looking to do. 501c3 process is a pretty cumbersome process. particularly during these COVID days. That could be a significant time frame in terms of making that happen. I've been a part of 501c3s as a lawyer before I became mayor, and certainly been involved in 501c3s, the creation, and that can take a significant period of time. And I felt like we had a window here to make it work, and I think this would be the way to go. During our discussions, we did talk about it quite a bit. I wanted Tim Brown to maybe address that as well. He was involved and kind of at the heart of those discussions with his background as well. I wanted him to speak to that.
Mr. Brown.
When we started talking about how this could operate, there was a lot of conversation about the Peabody Cultural Collaborative taking over the museum and going with it and creating staffing patterns and everything that would go along with this. The Cultural Collaborative really felt at that time, and still feels, we just do not have the bandwidth to be able to develop all the policies, the procedures, the staffing requirements, the insurance packages, everything that you need to do to be able to hire staff. We pieced it together for the pop-up. We were able to raise the funds, pull it together, come up with a plan to be able to operate, knowing it was going to be 3 months. Throughout the 9-month period, we really looked at, could we take it over full time? There's potential, but we also felt like, we, as a group, we were probably not the best people to be the ones operating the museum on a full-time basis, and we would have to create another entity to do that. And that's a 6 months, at least minimum 6-month process, could go up to a year. With a location such as this, I really feel like we need to jump on it. I'm not sure Viceroy will want to sit and wait for us to be able to develop the next stages and to be able to spin off another 501c3. What the Peabody Cultural Collaborative Board has done and has voted on unanimously is to be supportive of this project, to work as a partner, and to apply for the grants that 501c3s can apply for and be a fiscal intermediary when necessary. What we've seen in community development work through other foundations and grants, it's the partnership of the nonprofit and the municipality that will help drive additional funding. It is our partnership that's been highlighted through mass development across the state time and time again. It's our partnership that the Barr Foundation and Essex Community County Foundation has highlighted. So we think it's doing this as a partnership with the PCC being a fiscal intermediary and being the lead for a lot of the grants.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate the answer. So I guess my question would be to anybody, does anybody know of a city that actually runs a children's museum? I couldn't locate one. I didn't know if, obviously I probably missed a couple somewhere in the whole state of Massachusetts, but I couldn't find one that was operated by a city because I wanted to find, an equal and, comparison. Has anybody come across one?
The two organizations that we have worked with is Dover, New Hampshire, and Fall River. Those are the ones that we've been reaching out to seek advice and to work with. Fall River was originally owned by the city, operated by the city, and then it morphed into more of a private organization that ran it. Those are the two we met mostly with. A couple of others we viewed at, but we didn't, or we visited, but we didn't quite get into how their operation works. So no, not that I'm aware of. And again, I think there's opportunities to have this morph into something else, but I believe that this is the right step for us to take at this particular moment to make this happen. And then I think the possibilities are limitless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the word risk has been mentioned several times this evening, whether it be minimal risk or risk with potential. I'm going to base my vote in support of this project based on financial risk. Is it something that the city can handle? And at this point in time, given our economy and all that's going on in the world, cost of fuel, increase in taxes. So that's what I'll be basing my decision on. I certainly, as Councilor Turco pointed out as well, I certainly support the concept of the Children's Museum. I think it was wonderful as a pop-up, and I heard a lot of positive things about it. But again, my role here as a city councilor, I feel, is to gauge whether we can support the financial risk. So with that, I just have a few questions. The lease we have here, Mayor, you said it was a 5-year lease, and I think we have years 1, 2, and 3 in front of us. Is there 4 and 5? Did I miss it?
No, we wanted to show that we anticipate the first couple of years there may be we'd be slightly below what we need to break even. Year 3, we anticipate that we would be breaking even. I could have done it further out in the year, but we believe that year 3 gets us to where we're self-sustaining or even profitable.
You specifically, I'm looking at the lease, the amount. The first year, it will be $92,400. Increasing to the second year, $117,203. Increasing the third year, $120,954. What would it be in the fifth and final year increase?
First 5 years. Yep. So just to be clear, we have dates that are listed on this agreement, the lease agreement. However, the lease doesn't take effect until we get from the building inspector a certificate of occupancy. So once the work is done, once the certificate of occupancy is obtained and provided to us and provided to Viceroy, that's when the lease takes effect. So the 5-year term would begin at that moment when the certificate of occupancy is presented to us and the building is turned over to us, because there is at least a couple months of work that's going to take place. So yeah, so it does list the 5 years on page 4 of the lease. To carry us through to the end of December 31st of 2026. That period of time would be pushed back into 2027 because we won't be getting the certificate of occupancy, at least for a couple of months. So as you mentioned, Councilor, we're looking at the first year. Well, actually, I'll just start with year 2. 112,000. Year 3 would be 116,000. Year 4 would be 120,000. And then year 5 would be 127,500. The first 3 months are reduced just as a gesture from Viceroy. So that might skew the numbers that you're seeing on page 4, but it's really just because of the fact that Viceroy is a gesture of goodwill and to us provided a reduced 3-month period.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And the taxes, were we getting, I'm assuming this is a triple net, so we'll be picking up the taxes that we were getting. We were getting taxes. Now it's a triple net, so now we're not going to get the taxes of $20,000 a year, but we'll be paying those taxes in the...
Yes, it is a triple net lease. We would be responsible for rent, taxes, and utilities. Which is pretty common now in terms of lease operations. So yes, approximately 18 to 20,000 is the taxes, and that would then be that would not be received anymore, or it would be received. It would be just paid to Viceroy, and that would be paid through the city. So we do not get a reduction or a relinquishment of that obligation because it's city-operated property, similar to what we have at 27 Lowell Street across the street.
Right.
We pay taxes there.
Right. So same as the school administration building, entering into leasing private property, we used to get a tax from the previous owner paying property tax, yet we entered into a lease so we don't get that property tax, and we end up paying that tax. So it'll be similar to that again. When we rent private property, we lose a tax, and we pick up paying that same tax. Correct?
Actually, we still get paid. We don't lose the money. The money is still coming to us. Viceroy's still responsible to pay the taxes on the property. So we don't lose the tax revenue. We're just paying the 18, 19,000. So we're not losing the tax revenue, but we're the ones paying Viceroy so that they would pay.
Okay, so we're paying the taxes, so that's a loss to me. Okay, thank you. And then moving on to the estimated utility costs, I'm assuming, is this gas? Or is it gas or oil?
It's gas, National Grid.
Gas, okay. So with the increase of utilities, given what's going on in the world as we speak, with these numbers, perhaps through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Gingrich, these estimated utility costs, do you think that they are accurate given the significant increases that we're facing in utilities?
Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. What we did here is we used this $1.75 square foot estimate because we don't have the actual history of the usage in that property. So it'd be difficult to determine how much either less or more that the utility costs would actually be until we occupy it and heat it and use the utility.
Sure. I guess, let me rephrase my question. When you put this together, I'm surmising that you put this together some time ago. So will this number that you had come up with originally prior to our current situation, with the significant increase expected already and happening already on fuel, do you think that that is an accurate number today, given the crises that we're facing with fuel? Because again, I believe you put this together some time ago, prior to the crisis going on.
Yes, it was put together a couple of months ago. There is a slight escalation from year to year. I think it was 3%. But again, there's no way of knowing if this is a representation of the usage. This is an estimate, and this whole pro forma is an estimate.
Yes, exactly. It's an estimate that incorporates a lot of risk-taking, and that's why I'm asking these questions. These are all estimates. So I just think that line item for fuel, given that you put this together months ago, is it's not possible that it's near what it would cost today. That's my estimation. And I have a question regarding the 1.2 million, Mayor, that you had mentioned in the letter in our packet, the 2018 Chapter 228, 1.2 million, that letter that had gone to our delegation. If I can, yes, it's on the last page of item B, and it mentions that just in the first sentence that it includes 1.2 million for construction of a permanent children's museum in Peabody. And since we're entering into a lease, does that jeopardize the 1.2 million since it's referenced as going towards construction of a permanent children's museum? Would we be jeopardizing that 1.2 million?
That's a very good question. I'm told that it does not.
Thank you. And, yeah, okay. Again, I appreciate everybody's work that they've done, and I appreciate the enthusiasm and the hope for something to generate some interest in downtown with this concept of a children's museum. I'm sensing that the timing is not right for this, given our economy and the cost and the risk to the taxpayers. Creating a new department, complete with 2 new staff to increase with, in addition to salary, health insurance, and a pension, and Medicaid or Medicare costs. The timing is just not right for that, to enter into this lease, nor to support an ordinance change to create those things. I think the time is not right. Good concept, bad time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Gamache.
Thank you. I too understand the risk, but the concept is what's going to draw downtown. You know, we faced risk when we took on the skating rink. We took risk when we took on the golf course. One's been very successful and one has been, yeah, so-so, but that's the times we face. The biggest thing I have, and I've expressed this to the mayor and others that were willing to listen, is I cannot support any new positions unless they are self-sustaining. And even though this may take 1, 2, or 3 years for it to come back and start to make some money, I think that's a small price to pay to bring this downtown. You look at the amount of restaurants that are going to benefit from this, especially after the last 2 years of what we have faced downtown with COVID. All those restaurants have gone through the war, and I think it's time that they may be able to benefit from this type of adventure. So with that, I'm glad to see that it is a self-sustaining position, those 2 positions that we have. It's the same thing that, you know, you bring on a position in the city, and if it's by a grant or by some other end date of the monies that we're going to get, you never lay them off. We always keep them, and that's to the detraction of the taxpayer. So with that said, I can support this, and I believe it's a necessary addition to downtown. We're looking to start creating things with the other side, with Brody's coming before us for a new facility. I think it's time we put a little bit more faith and effort into the downtown to try to keep it a viable place to go. So I can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gamache. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, and your team for presenting this package to us. And it's with great enthusiasm that I support this. I was on board in the beginning. I remember on the bus ride to Dover with Mark Whiting and yourself and Councilor Walsh, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Rosignol. There was a lot of enthusiasm. Once we saw the site, we just couldn't wait to find the appropriate spot in Peabody. Thank you to the Peabody Cultural Collaborative for taking the initiative and doing the temporary pop-up. I was there with my grandchildren a number of times, and I just think it's the right thing. Yes, times are tough, but it's not a huge risk that we're taking, and I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Any questions for Councilor Daigle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. I'm not on this committee, but I'll be brief. We've mentioned the word risk a lot of times. I'm going to mention the word investment a lot. An investment is a risk, and I've been fortunate enough to be part of this project from that infamous bus ride to Dover, New Hampshire back 8 years ago, and I've been part of Peabody Main Streets ever since. And This is taking a chance, but I think I've spoken very recently with a lot of the downtown businesses, and this is a glimmer of hope for them to continue their business, and they've invested a lot. So that being said, I think we need to, if we're going to make this investment, we need to invest in our downtown and make sure we can maintain the streets and the sidewalks and make it more pedestrian friendly. So if we're willing to take on this project as a museum, we need to be able to take on and manage that. But otherwise, I'm fully supportive. I think our main streets, we spent a lot of time trying to revamp that. We've spent millions of dollars with infrastructure improvements, 2 sections of downtown and now Central Street. So this continues that investment for our downtown. So I think this is fantastic. I've been happy and proud to be a part of it ever since almost day one. My only other feedback is kind of silly, but looking at your projections in the 3-year budget, which seems very fair, I think you got to beef up that advertising budget to market this project and this museum in order for it to be a region-wide success, which I think it will be. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Daigle. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Chairman McGinn. I also am not on this committee, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I love the idea of the Children's Museum coming to downtown Peabody. However, I do understand the concerns of my fellow councilors that are hesitant with it being set up as a city entity. I personally would like to also see it as a 501c3 at some point, but I also understand the mayor's point is very well taken that that's a very lengthy and cumbersome process, and we may have an opportunity that is time-bound within a window. So I see the urgency and the real need if we are going to invest into this type of project to make the move. My question, I guess, back to this committee is really the first 2 years we're not going to have great data in terms of how much money this is going to raise. We're still going to be probably financing the build-out costs. We're going to be pursuing funds both through a fiscal sponsorship with Curious City or the PCC and with municipal funding for the city. I wonder if it might be an appropriate opportunity. We've spoken about risk and uncertainty. If we could move forward potentially with the creation of this museum department and have a look back at this in 3 years' time to see if this is something that has been successful to that date. I think by that point we'll know if we are interested and better suited to pursue as a 501c3 or if it makes great sense to keep it as a city entity. I think that might give us and afford us the opportunity to have a little bit more significant data that we can review at that point. So again, I'm not on this committee, but I wanted to kind of float that idea out there and see if that might be an opportunity to further discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Councilor O'Neill.
And thank you, Chairman. Again, like the other councilors, I'm not a member of this committee, so I appreciate the opportunity to just make a couple quick comments. Just general thoughts. I like the concept. You know, I said this to the mayor a few weeks ago that, you know, it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. But I do get the concept to bring this to downtown, support the businesses, and create avenues for people to visit the city, visit restaurants. A couple things I just want to comment. It's almost to dovetail on what you know, Councilor Welton said, that, you know, if this is supported to this committee and then to the council later on, and it's actually created as a separate entity, you know, what metrics are we going to use as a city to say, say 4 years? You know, we look at and say, is it something we want to continue? What hard statistics or metrics are we going to say this is a success? And then also, as part B to that question, the people, if they're hired as a director or a part-time assistant or whatever we want to call it, I forget the exact title, the 2 paid city employees as proposed, what are they going to be held accountable to for, whether it be grants and saying, like, this is what you need to do, rather than just saying, hey, we hope it works out, and if it doesn't, we'll continue. Because at the end of the day, we're all elected officials, held, you know, accountable for budgets, and we all have competing challenges as a city to big projects, small projects, and is this a priority? So I guess I just would say, what are we going to hold those people accountable for those jobs to make sure that if it's a success, we can measure it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Neill. Mr. Mayor, would you like to respond to?
Yes, very briefly. First, Council Walton, I think that's a great idea. I'd be all for that. I think this is something, if successful tonight, that we're going to be reviewing pretty regularly. And, certainly something, when I mentioned there would be a board of directors like we do at the Senior Center, I certainly would like to have somebody from the City Council on that. One or two members. I think that'd be important. In terms of accountability, certainly the bottom line, big part of it will be what we bring in. And there will be expectations from the executive director and the friends of and the board itself to be able to produce opportunities for sponsorships, donations, and to get the community involved. So absolutely, I think they would be held accountable for the revenue they bring in. I think the key for us is going to be to hire the right person. And talking to the other municipalities or other organizations that have done this, the executive director is a key position. And I did want to mention, I apologize for not mentioning it earlier, when I gave information a couple of months ago, the salary for the executive director, I believe I put it 75. I did bump that up very recently. In the submittal I gave a couple of weeks ago, we moved it up to a little over 81,000, a difference of about 5,000 or 6,000. The reason I did that was because when we started reaching out and getting information from some of the other organizations, they believe that that was the right number for us, because that is going to be the key for us going forward, is to have that right person in place. So I expect that person, not only will the day-to-day operations be obviously essential for that position, but also leading us in direction with fundraising and sponsorships and donations, and working together with the board, with the Friends of, working with us, Community Development Department, City Council, my office, to support one another and to make it happen. So just like any employee, it's, they have to be able to provide what the department needs, and that's going to be key for that position. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Through Chairman McGinn, I'd just like to ask, and I know it's a hard question because we're talking about this and it's a new entity, a possible new operation, but I guess want to just make sure that we as a city, if we say at the end of 4 years that, this has worked or hasn't, what is that statistic and metric? There's been a lot of analysis on this. What is the thing that says we continue this or we cut bait and say, we're not doing it and thank you very much? Worst case scenario, just so we're not contributing to something that's not self-sustaining and is a loss leader to a great degree, just in general. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, some of the success will be hard to put a dollar figure on in terms of how it works for the businesses, restaurants and shops and things. That it'll be hard to ascertain, or maybe it won't be. Maybe we'll be able to get information directly from them. But it is going to be really determined by what the numbers are. It'll be hard for me to come forward in 4.5 years to ask for a continuation on the existing lease if we're operating in the red. That would be very difficult for me to do, and that would, I would be unlikely to do that if that's the case. So, there's benefits broader than just what the bottom line is, but really for me to come in and request an extension or to go forward with further terms on the lease, it would we need to be right in that sweet spot where we're profitable or self-sustaining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 young kids, and so the thought of a children's museum is a happy one that we don't have to travel into the city for. So I agree with many of the other counselors that in concept, I think this is a great idea and there's a lot of potential for it. But I am concerned about the risk that is there. To invest $500,000 in something that could be a great success or might not. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor, do you happen to know how long it took, was it Fall River, to transfer their city-run museum over to a nonprofit?
I don't know exactly how the timing of that or how that broke down. I know that the town was involved and has been involved to a certain degree, even to this day. The lady who's run the Fall River Children's Museum is just retiring, actually coming up this spring after 21 years running the museum, and she couldn't speak enough about the success and the town support and everything, but I don't know exactly the timing on that.
And To Councilor Welton's point, I think I would be a lot more comfortable supporting this proposal when it comes to the whole committee. If we had a time, if it was written in here somehow, I don't know how that works, maybe through the clerk, but that this is reviewed in 3 to 4 years before we renew that lease, and that we can, either just kind of cut ties with it and walk away, or it is a great success, which I think we all hope it will be. But if I don't know how that works, Mr. Chairman, if that's something we would write into the ordinance, or is just something that's passed along with it in writing.
I think that question was to me, Councilor Peach. We could make, if it was the will of the committee, a motion to request that type of a review in year 3 or 4, but I think it needs to be independent of any motion relative to the establishment of the or the approval of the ordinance change. But we could make a separate motion to require that periodic review that I think you're suggesting.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, if I was a council, I would support that motion. I think that's a good motion to make, and I'd be all for that. And Councilor Turco made some good points. It's been echoed by others that maybe 501c3 is the right thing for us, and I'm very open to continuing that discussion and working with the Peabody Cultural Collaborative. They were reticent to take that on at this particular moment, but I think that's something that we'll continue to talk about. And long term, I do think that probably makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one additional question. In the data that we got for the pop-up, it was indicated that about 40% of the visits utilized a free pass. When we did this estimate, I guess this is to Mr. Gingrich, when we did this estimate on ticket sales, it says, these are paid visits, but I just wanted to confirm that we did take into account the fact that in our pop-up, 40% of those visits were unpaid. If we're going to continue to offer the same SNAP or EBT admission at this, which I don't know whether that's in the plan. I know the library passes are paid for in a different method and accounted for in your estimate.
What we're doing here is we're strictly going on paid ticket sales, assuming they're going to increase beyond what the pop-up was, and there would be some free people visiting, but it wouldn't be that 40% level. We'd be a little bit more strict on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Peach. Any other councilors, committee members? Seeing none, a couple of comments from myself. Actually, Ms. Gingras, if you could step back up for a moment. In the pro forma, on the revenue side, the biggest line item is obviously that $325,000, which as you were very clear, this is all an estimate, but that particular estimate, that's a big one if it doesn't materialize. And Mr. Mayor, he had indicated that maybe that was not inclusive of the CDA grant and may not be inclusive of the bond money that would be forthcoming. I was under the impression that it probably would be, because otherwise that seems like a stretch in year one for $325,000 in fundraising. So if you could just address that.
Yeah, it may be a little bit of a stretch in year one because of the timing of when the team could get started on looking for grants and applying for grants. But this is an amount that the team put together, believing that through various different opportunities that they could get grants and funding other than the $1.2 million or the $400,000 seed money.
Okay, so if so the CDA grant has already materialized, and if we are successful in getting the bond bill money released, it's incremental to this in your mind, but with it being potentially soft in year one. Am I hearing you correctly?
Those amounts are not included in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Yeah, no, I am in strong agreement with much of what's been presented tonight. Like Julie and others, Tom, Councilor Gould, Councilor Daigle, who said they were part of that first visit, as was I, and some meetings in the run-up to that. So this has really been envisioned since 2014. Just to summarize what Mr. Whiting said with respect to the economic benefit to the area and drawing of young families to the area, these are things that I can't pass on given the risk. I do prefer the investment terminology in this particular instance. I am in strong agreement with Councilor Turco's reservation about how we're going about doing this, but there seems to be an openness on the part of the mayor to consider gravitating this towards 501c3 over time, and I do agree with the mayor and Mr. Brown in terms of striking while the iron is hot here, so to speak. We have a window of opportunity. I think this is going to be the fastest way to move, and I think we should do that. As long as there remains a commitment to reevaluating this structure as we go forward, and I think we've heard that pretty loud and clear from the mayor tonight. So it's my intention to support that, to support this request. And with that, what is the will of the committee? Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If okay by you, I would like to move forward on giving the mayor the authority to negotiate a lease agreement for the Peabody Curious City Children's Museum at 10 Main Street. So moved. If that's what you're looking for, Mr. Chairman.
That will be, that's item...
That's C.
C. But we can take them out of order. So on item C...
well, we can go in order. We'll go to A.
No, you've heard the motion from Councilor Gould.
Right.
And it's for a term of 5 years.
5-year term. So moved.
You've heard the motion from Councilor Gould on the motion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
No.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Okay, so committee members, we're going back to item A, but you need to keep in mind that the mayor has, as he pointed out, altered some of the information on A in his attachment to the supplement on B. So as we're structuring any motions, we need to be looking at item B. And it is within item B. It is the third attachment, which is the letter dated December 2nd, 2021 from His Honor the Mayor. And attached to that, there are 2 requested changes. So is everybody there? Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An ordinance amending Article 3, Department by adding Division and Division 8, Children's Museum Department. And that's referencing the letter submitted to us by the mayor. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So you've heard the motion from Councilor Gould, which is a motion to advertise an ordinance amending Article 3, Departments by adding Division 8, Children's Museum Department, as substantially detailed in communication is on the mayor, an attachment to that communication dated December 2nd, 2021. On the motion, Councilor Manning Martin.
Yes. Is this the one that the change is the salary amount has gone up?
It is not.
Okay.
That would be the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, other councilors, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
No.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 to 2.
And, Mr. Chairman, the second part of that, an ordinance amending Section 2821 entitled Schedule of Compensation for Full-Time Positions Not Subject to Collective Bargaining, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Peabody as follows. Section 1, the ordinance establishing a compensation and classification plan is hereby amended as follows. The Code of the City of Peabody, as adopted on January 23, 1969, and amended, is hereby further amended by adding sections 18-21, the ordinance establishing a compensation and classification plans as follows. The executive director's salary maximum, and the new number is, Mr. Chairman, 81.
That's correct.
81,168, and the assistant director's salary maximum, 51,689. Section 2, all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect upon passage or as other provided by law. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
You heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Gamache. Turco.
No.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 to 2.
Thank you, Council.
Before we leave that, there was a suggestion made on a motion to evaluate the relative success or lack thereof in the out years. Does anybody on the committee care to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion on behalf of Councilor Peach. Co-motion.
And do you want to specify a time frame, Councilor Manning Martin?
To be reviewed in 3 years.
You've heard the motion from Councilor Manning Martin. On the motion, Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a first lease is 5 years, I believe, correct?
That's correct.
And so that means that after 3 years, if we're not performing, then we walk away from our lease. That I'm not sure we can legally do that.
I think the idea was that at that point in time, Councilor O'Neill had suggested that we may have adequate data at that point to start to do a more comprehensive review of how it's going. I don't think the idea would be, I don't want to speak.
Walk away from the
to
lease.
walk away from the lease at that point, but it would that would be the point at which we would be in a better position to understand the long-term viability.
Thank you for the clarification.
There's a motion on the floor. Anybody else? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 to 0.
Moving on, councilors. Next item on the agenda is an Oppa update. Mr. Gingras.
Thank you. In your packet, I put together a recap of where we stand on the ARPA funding. We initially received $10.5 million, and we allocated $2.1 million and $111,000 for 2020 deficits, $562,703 for revenue replacement in 2021, and as part of the current year FY 2022 budget, we've allocated $4.5 million in ARPA funds to fund the budget. In addition to that, there's a drainage project on Mountain Terrace and Granite Street for $404,000. So after our first distribution of $10.5 million, we have $2.7 million remaining. In anticipation of a second round during the next 12 months, we will receive another $10.5 million. So the total amount available will be $13.2 million going forward. And future uses, we're currently using some of the ARPA funds for some health-related and security-related costs, which will probably run somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 this current year. And then to be determined, revenue replacement for FY23 budget, FY24 budget, and some other water or infrastructure projects for the remaining money that's not revenue replacement related.
Thank you, Mr. Gingras. Questions from the committee? Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. To either Mr. Gingras or the mayor, there's COVID monitoring health and security. Is that dealing with air quality at the schools, any of that, Michael?
No, that's predominantly some pandemic nursing and security and control here at City Hall.
So is there ARPA money for any of the school health and safety?
None of this money has been allocated to any of those projects at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Questions from other councilors? Seeing none, Mr. Gingras, could you just talk a little bit, or give us a little bit of additional information about how much of this total funding can be used for revenue replacement over time, because there is a cap, and if you could just address that.
As part of the process of going through the ARPA rule sets, they initially came out with a interim financial rule, and under that rule, you could calculate out what your revenue replacement was by looking at a baseline year of 2019, running through a formula with an escalation of a little over 4%. And we came out with a number at the end of that formula of $12.3 million. Of that, we've used $7.4 million, so there's approximately $4.9 million left that's related to revenue replacement.
Thank you. And it doesn't have to be used on revenue replacement, right? That's just the maximum.
That's the cap, yes.
Thank you. And, probably some residents have read articles about how other communities have used this money that aren't for the express purposes of, that were kind of called out specifically in the ARPA legislation, things like fixing roads and so forth. Could you just explain how that can happen? There's kind of a way to back into it, and if you could just kind of share that with the council so there's an awareness as we move forward with future budget cycles.
Yes, so from my understanding, going through the MMA webinar, what communities have been doing is determining a project that they may want to pursue, then going through the 437-page document and trying to have that project meet the criteria that ARPA requires in order to make the project viable under the ARPA regulation. One of the ways that they're suggesting is use of revenue replacement money to fund a particular project that's put into the budget.
Thank you. So there would have to be, if we were ever to take that approach, we would have to be very cognizant of the fact that that's kind of a one-time deal. Thank you. I'm not sure everybody caught that, but you mentioned the guidance on this being 437 pages, so I just want to reiterate that to the committee, that we need to be very careful on how we proceed, and I'm very grateful that you're wading through all that guidance so that we know that what we can and can't do within the rules and regulations around this funding. Seeing no other questions on this, I think I'm going to leave this in committee if that's acceptable to the committee. And I'll just report it out as a report of progress, and I think perhaps we'll periodically ask Director of Finance to come back and give us updates on this since it's such an important topic. Next item on the agenda is transfer of funds, CPC document preservation, vital records in an amount of $33,668. Mr. Gingras.
Yes, this is a request to scan and record and index vital records for the clerk from the CPC historic preservation funding.
Questions from the committee? Questions from other councilors? Councilor Gould.
My apologies, Council. I just wanted to remind you that when we voted on this, you had a question that you wanted to ask regarding this funding, and I think when the city clerk came before CPC, there was a suggestion from one of the members, the newer members, that to ask if there was any funding already in the budget for the city clerk's office for items like these, and I think you had said you were going to follow up. I just wanted to give you a reminder, if you remember that conversation at all.
I don't, Councilor, but thank you.
Okay, so with that said, I'll ask Mr. Gingrich, is there any money in the city clerk's budget for items like this at all? Thank you.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Turco, for help clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ready to make a motion to transfer from account number 270-0000-33022 in the amount of $33,668 from account name CPC Historic Preservation to account number 270-181-58563-2022-00-0346, again in the amount of $33,668, named account CPC Document Preservation Vital Records. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Last item on the agenda, transfer of funds, fiscal year 2022 legal budget, an amount of $75,000. Mr. Gingras.
Thank you. This is a transfer request to take $75,000 from budgeted reserve and transfer to the legal budget to fund a post-arbitration settlement with a former employee.
Thank you, Mr. Gingras. Questions from the committee? Questions from other councilors? Seeing none. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to transfer from budgeted reserve account number 100-1320-57410, the amount of $75,000, to account number FY 2022 legal budget, account number 100-1510-53114, again in the amount of $75,000. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Adjourn.
You heard the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. We are adjourned.
Begin in 1 minute. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Peabody City Council meeting to be held today, Thursday, February 24th at 7:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing any and all business via in-person and remote participation in accordance with Chapter 48 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 28 B and C of the Acts of 2021, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be provided in the following manner. The meeting is being televised live by Peabody Access Television on cable channel 9. Real-time public comment during public hearings can be addressed to the Peabody City Council using the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. Users may view the meeting and make a comment or question to the chair via the audio option. Please visit www.peabody-ma.gov for Zoom information. This meeting is being taped by Peabody Access TV and is also being recorded by the City Council stenographer. Please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Gould. You heard the motion from Councilor Gould for approval of the record. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. All right, moving on to item 4, hearings. Councilor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, I move to receive late communication 1.
So we're going to move to approve the late communication and then approve the request for a continuance, Councilor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Peach. You heard the motion from Councilor Peach. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. All right. We're going to move on to item 4B. The clerk will read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, February 24th, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on petition 21-244 submitted by the Peabody Municipal Light Plant, 201 Warren Street Extension, Peabody, Mass., requesting to install one utility pole, number 5-1, at a point approximately 60 feet to the southeast of the existing location of pole number 5 along the southern side of Butternut Avenue in the vicinity of 6 Butternut Avenue. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage or contact the City Clerk's office. Peabody City Council, Councilor Ryan Melville, City Council President.
The petitioner, please approach and just give us a summary of what you're trying to do. Name and address for the record, please. You can push the button.
How you doing? My name is William Cardello. I'm an engineer for Peabody Light. And all right. And we are looking to set a new pole 5-1 on Butternut Ave. It's going to be approximately on the property line between houses number 4 and 6. And this was requested by the homeowner to house number 6 because they want to, after they're currently building a house addition and they want to upgrade their electric service. So they want a utility pole out front of the house, which they have paid PMLP for the work, and we are looking to set it in the grass utility strip outside of the house, kind of along the property line. And PMLP will use that to attach our overhead lines, and then it will go underground from there to the new house service.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to this petition? Anybody wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Cardell explained it perfectly that this is a service that was requested by the homeowner. They are paying for all costs, so the city or PMLP are not bearing any costs. I'm in full support of this, given the situation, and once again, the costs are being picked up. At this time, I guess I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Before that, any other councilors? Councilor O'Neill, you have a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we do have somebody on the Zoom that's a phone call, and the clerk is seeing if they are here to speak in regarding this particular issue. Give them an opportunity. Are you here? What's the last 4 digits? Phone number 030033. Are you here to speak for this particular petition, or are you speaking on with regards to the hearing later? Okay, so seeing that they're not answering on that, we'll move forward. Councilor, you had a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd make a motion to approve petition 21-244 submitted by the Peabody Municipal Light Plant, 201 Warren Street Extension. Peabody, Mass. Requesting to install one utility pole number 5-1 at a point approximately 60 feet to the southeast of the existing location of pole number 5 along the southern side of Butternut Avenue in the vicinity of 6 Butternut Avenue. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor O'Neill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
All set. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, going to move on to item 4C, entertainment license. The clerk will read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, February 24th, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from The Next Thing, LLC, 5 Central Street, Peabody, Mass., requesting an entertainment license for non-live entertainment, specifically televisions and digital internet music and live entertainment, specifically live music, karaoke, DJ, comedy acts, and social entertainment at 5 Central Street, Peabody, Mass. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage, or contact the City Clerk's office. Peabody City Council, Councilor Ryan Melville, City Council President.
Thank you. The petitioner, if you want to push the button and just give us name and address for the record, and just give us a summary of what you're looking to do.
Hi, my name is Emil Sepulveda from Next Thing at 5 Central Street in Peabody. We're looking to acquire a full entertainment license for our patrons to be able to provide live music, karaoke, trivia nights, paint nights, whatever is available for our patrons there at Next.
Thanks, Emil. Anybody in the audience wish to speak in favor of this petitioner? Anybody wish to speak in favor? Anybody on the Zoom platform wish to speak in favor of this? I'm not seeing any. Anybody in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Anybody wish to speak in opposition? Anybody on Zoom wish to speak in opposition? I'm not seeing anything. Counselor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive late communication 3, the communication from the Health Department on this application.
Thank you, Counselor. You heard the motion from Counselor Peach. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Counselor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this application is pretty straightforward. It is nothing beyond the scope of what's been approved for this location in the past for other restaurants that have been there. The Next Best Thing is an established company, established restaurant in our downtown. This is their third and final location for downtown Peabody, and I'm happy to welcome them to Ward 3. I think this just really is in line with most of the restaurants that we see and we all patronize throughout the city, so I'm in full support of this application.
Thank you, Counselor Peach. Any other counselors? Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, in line with Councilor Peach's comments, I'm a big fan of the Next Best Thing. It was sad that they went just ever so slightly over the line into Ward 3, but in their two prior Ward 2 locations, they did a great job. They run a very nice operation, very, very pleasant. I'm not expecting anything out of the ordinary from the type of entertainment that they would be providing here, and I think that the hours that they've selected are sensitive to the residents that live right upstairs in this property and the residents that live in the property next door. So I'm in full support of it, and I wish you the best of luck in that location. Thanks, Emil. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Any other counselors? See, now I'll only say, Emil, I think, what was it, 2012? You and I met in Boston on State Street and told me we were going to do all this stuff, and I said, good luck. And you've done a great job. Wish you nothing but the best. Councilor Peach?
Move to close the public hearing.
You heard the motion from Councilor Peach to close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Peach?
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the application of the Next Best Thing LLC at 5 Central Street, Peabody, Mass., requesting an entertainment license for non-live entertainment, specifically televisions and digital internet music, and live entertainment, specifically live music, karaoke, DJ, comedy acts, and social entertainment at 5 Central Street. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor Peach. Any comment on the motion? Discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould. Yes. Manning Martin.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 4D, special permit for Electrify America. The clerk will read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as the special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, February 24th, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from Electrify America, care of Aldrich Gomez, 2003 Edmund Haley Drive, Reston, Virginia, for a special permit to install electric vehicle charging stations and accessory utility equipment adjacent to the Lifetime Fitness site at 210 Andover Street, Peabody, Mass., as filed in accordance with Sections 4.2.5, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage or contact the City Clerk's office. Peabody City Council, Councilor Ryan Melville, City Council President.
Thank you. Will the petitioner state your name and address for the record and just a summary of what you're looking to do?
Yes. My name is Frank Grant, Program Manager with SAI Group, here representing Electrify America. We are 12 Industrial Way in Salem, New Hampshire. We propose to install 4 150 kilowatt DC fast chargers at the North Shore Mall that will be able to service all electric vehicle charging brands, and yes.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anybody wish to speak in favor? Anybody on Zoom wish to speak in favor? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Anybody wish to speak in opposition? Anybody on Zoom for opposition? Nope. Seeing none, Councilor Daigle.
Thank you, Mr. President. And under suspension of the rules, I move to receive late communication 3 from the Health Department. So moved.
Thank you, Council. You have the motion from Councilor Daigle. All in favor? Any opposed to vote?
Thank you. I had the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Grant, the project manager, and Rebecca Sharp earlier this week. They briefly described the project for the 4 charging stations at the North Shore Mall. The mall did choose the location for them. I guess there was a little bit of negotiation and back and forth. And we have addressed and discussed all of the concerns from the city departments, including public services. There will be, if you look at our plans, there are bollards protecting any electrical equipment around the parking spaces. As far as snow management, that's more on the onus of the North Shore Mall. I spoke with Mr. Whiting earlier today, and he assured me that any snow storage will be away from these 4 parking spots. He also addressed the concern raised by the health department of any rodent control and mitigation for any underground work that's performed. So I consider that less of the applicant's responsibility, more of the owner, the mall's responsibility to mitigate the snow storage and the rodent control. But we're all on the same page that the mall will continue to keep their word and take care of this. So this is 4 charging spaces, which I think we need. I don't know that other than the mall, there are any other sites in the city. I think we'll start to see more and more of them. They can accommodate long and short-term parking, rather than either for employees or visitors. You can pay by credit card or by an app on your phone. So otherwise, I am in support of this project, and am open to any other comments or questions from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daigle. Any other councilors? Councilor Manning Martin, and then Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm certainly in support of this. Just a question through you to Councilor Daigle. Will you be putting the language of conditions? You mentioned it's in the plan, but will you be putting in on the conditions, the verbiage on as conditions of the permit? Specifically the ballards, the placement of the ballards, and I think pest control that was mentioned also by the health department?
Through Mr. President to you, Councilor Manning Martin. I was not planning on it where this application is coming from the tenant and a lot of those conditions, other than the bollards, I could if that's what the will of the council, but the snow storage and the health mitigation I find to be on the North Shore Mall.
Very good. Then if you would place the ballards on as a condition, simply because we've been burned in the past if it's on a plan, but the language is not on the condition, the building inspector can't enforce it. So if you could just put the ballard in as a condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Turco, and then Councilor McGinn.
Thank you. Through you to Council Daigle. The rodent control was something that we had put in ordinance a while back for any underground utility work. So I'm not really sure that it would be the malls on them to do it, because I think this is the company that's actually digging. You're actually doing the digging. So they're actually digging the trench. So they would be responsible for trapping or baiting the trench. You're providing a pest management plan to the health department for that trench that they're digging. But I don't think the mall has anything to do, particularly other than than giving them space for the project. So maybe some clarification on it, or.
Do you have anything you want to add to that? Looked like you were shaking your head yes.
No, it was my understanding coming in that the mall would be providing support for the pest control, but if that becomes a condition, that is certainly not a deal breaker for us.
Thank you.
Okay, it was basically just to let Council Daigle know that we had discussed this. Council McGinn and I think Council Rossignol sat in with the health department, and it was a condition that Sharon wanted to make on any underground utility work throughout the city. And I believe we passed that section of the ordinance for rodent control. Was the second section. So just for informational. My other question, about a year ago, we had approved maybe 4 of these at the North Shore Mall, these charging stations. They were, I think, advertisement stations, and I think they were free. At least we passed the permit to do it. I don't know whether it was ever done. So these aren't advertisement stations?
Correct. No, the charging stations themselves do have LED lighting and will be branded with Electrify America on the units themselves. But no.
And just for my own information, how do we go about adding more of these throughout the city? Because I think it will be an issue. Do you charge them all, or does the mall pay you? Or
No.
how does this work?
The way Electrify America's program works for these particular programs is that they partner with large retailers around the country and lease the space. So everything is controlled and maintained by Electrify America, and there is no responsibility other than the things we mentioned, like snow removal and maintaining the property around the stations. But in terms of maintenance of the actual equipment and things of that nature is all on Electrify America at that point. It's part of their lease agreement.
Thank you. Last question. So do you have any work with municipalities? Have you ever done any work for, or is it just retailers?
Electrify America partners with a lot of different entities throughout the country. For the most part, it's large retailers, but we have done certain programs on other types of properties as well.
Thank you.
And Councilor McGinn, and then Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Councilor Daigle, I had reached out to Councilor Daigle kind of consistent with the charging stations that Councilor Turco referred to a moment ago at the mall. I don't think those actually were ever installed after they got the permit. However, they weren't aware of the ordinance that we have, and I believe Councilor Daigle provided that to you. If Councilor Daigle, I see you nodding to the affirmative there. So I just want to confirm that you're aware of the ordinance and that you have reviewed it and you believe that your stations will be in full compliance with the ordinance.
That is correct, yes. We have reviewed it and we are in compliance with the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Councilor Welton, you still wanted to speak?
No, Mr. President. Councilor Turco had the same question I did regarding signage at these charging stations, and it appears there will be none, so thank you.
Very good. Any other councilors? Councilor Daigle?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Councilor Turco, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Are you looking for me to, I would prefer to simplify the number of special conditions, so if I'm comfortable with Mr. Grant has agreed if they need to provide the rodent control, they're willing to do so, but Mr. Whiting has also assured me they've got an integrated plan and company that works with the restaurants. So between the two of them, when they get underground, I'm comfortable that they can address any issues. But if you want that to be included as a special condition, I could do that.
Councilor Turco?
No, thank you. Councilor Daigle, this is very odd talking to you through the microphone. But anyway, no, that wasn't my intention. I wanted to let you know about the ordinance. Whoever agreed to do the work is fine. I just, for the future, I just wanted to be aware that that ordinance exists. So thank you. No.
Councilor Daigle?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor McGinn, for pointing out the new ordinance, or the ordinance from March 22nd of 2018 for the zero emission charging station. I skipped over my notes, but they have reviewed that and are certainly in accordance with that. So with nothing else, or no one else having any comments, I would like to make a motion to approve the special permit application 4D on our agenda for Electrify America at 210 Andover Street to install 4 electric vehicle charging stations and accessory utility.
Councilor Daigle?
Do I need to close the public hearing?
Yep.
I heard that early
All
on,
right,
but I was on a roll.
Thank you, Councilor. A motion to close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? The vote. Councilor Daigle, you can continue.
Would you like me to start over?
I think you're good. You can just continue.
To install, the motion is to install 4 electric vehicle charging stations and accessory utility equipment adjacent to Lifetime Fitness with the ballards that are on the site plan. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You had the motion from Councilor Daigle. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10 to 0.
All set. All right, moving on to item 4E. The clerk will read the public notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as the special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, February 24th, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from CV 13 Corwin LLC, care of Cargo Ventures, 440 McClellan Highway, 105P, East Boston, Mass., for a special permit to operate a trucking terminal in an IP district for extension to and improvement of the existing non-conforming front yard landscape area, 1A, Section 10, and extension of an existing non-conforming front yard landscape area per Section XXX of the ordinance 1.5.1, pre-existing non-conforming, for Section XXX front yard landscape setback 10.5.4B1 at 13 Corwin Street, Peabody, Mass. Is filed in accordance with Sections 1.5, 4.2.6, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage, or contact the City Clerk's office. Peabody City Council, Councilor Ryan Melville, City Council President.
Thank you, Clerk. Before we get started, Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, excuse me. Due to the fact that I'm an employee of the Massachusetts Port Authority and Forward Air currently operates through a sublease of land owned by the Port Authority on McClellan Highway at East Boston, Mass. I met with attorneys from the State Ethics Commission and the Massachusetts Port Authority. Because Forward Air operates through a sublease of that property and the master lease of the property will still remain in effect regardless of the outcome of this hearing, it was determined that I could participate in the special permit hearing, but should file a disclosure with the city clerk, which I have done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Would the applicant please come up and state your name and address for the record and a summary of what you're looking to do?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney, and I have offices at 40 Lowell Street in Peabody, Massachusetts, and I appear this evening on behalf of Jacob Citron, who is the manager of the applicant 13 CV Corwin LLC. I realize that before you in your packets is some, I think, 96 pages of documents related. In that package of documents related to our proposal, you have a community development memorandum coupled with the reports of the various committees, either submitting objections or non-objections. The only one of any recent significance is the Board of Health, who has asked us to address any hazmat issues that are at the site, and we're happy to do all those things. We are seeking a special permit for a trucking terminal. That's what's before you this evening, and I'm going to introduce you to Jacob Citron, who will introduce himself and parts of the project to you, and then you'll hear from our team of engineers. Thank you.
You just state your name and address for the record, and anybody that's going to come up do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I'm Jacob Citron, founder and CEO of Cargo Ventures, and the corporate office is in 1441 Brickell in Miami. So I'm joined tonight by Kevin Donahoe and Pat Capogreco with Cargo Ventures. Jack, of course, you know, and also Vinod Kalakiri and Karen Staffier with VHB. VHB has provided civil design and traffic and transportation expertise. Also joined tonight by Larry Feldman with GZA that has provided geotechnical and environmental advice along the way. When I founded Cargo Ventures back in 2003, I decided to focus on industrial development and in particular logistics facilities. And very early on, I encountered Forward Air, which is one of the companies that is part of the backbone of the global supply chain. And from that time have developed close to 4 different facilities for Forward Air, one of which is in East Boston on McClellan Highway that Councilor Turco referenced. Forward Air has been a tenant there for the last 13 years, and over time, their customer base has moved. that customer base has moved primarily to your community, Peabody. And Forward Air has decided that to better serve those customers, they need to move from East Boston to Peabody, and that began a search for a location to develop a facility. We ultimately settled on the Stall property, a 6.5-acre site with a 188,000 square foot industrial building. As you may be aware, Stall has over a very long period of time been slowly winding down their operations to the point where the industrial building there, the warehouse, is mostly empty, and the only real operations are in a small office building on site. Our objective, our proposal, is to redevelop the site and to create a modern industrial facility. As part of that, we would be improving the environmental conditions at the site, upgrading stormwater, reducing impervious surface, and address floodplain requirements. As of now, we have completed traffic and drainage design and peer reviews. We have received site plan approval from the Planning Board, and we have also received an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. And now I'd like to hand the slide presentation over to Karen Staffier with VHB, who will walk us through the particulars of our proposed redevelopment.
I just wanted to add one thing, is that this is a presentation, and we do not expect the council to vote this evening, and we would respond to any questions either this evening or that you may have during a recess period that are directed to us. So, Karen.
Just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Certainly. My name is Karen Staffier. I'm a registered professional engineer with Vanessa Hanger Breslin, specializing in civil engineering. Our address is 101 Walnut Street in Watertown, Massachusetts. So a moment ago, you saw the existing conditions on the site. Thank you to the person who removed that blob that was covering some of this picture. So this is the existing conditions on the site. In the proposed condition is what you see here on the right. So consistent with the industrial park zone, we're creating a 61,000 approximately square foot warehouse building with loading docks on the north and the south sides, access with 2 curb cuts on Corwin Street, which you see on the left side of the screen. There is a landscaped parking lot in the front for employee parking. And then we've managed to kind of consolidate the development on the parcel so that it's pulling away from the river in a way that the existing development was not, so pulling the developed area farther away from the resource. We've upgraded landscaping, upgraded lighting, new stormwater management system that was mentioned, which has operations and maintenance requirements tied to it through both the Planning and the Conservation Commission processes. And generally just improving a site that has deteriorated over time. From the building standpoint, it's a single-story building. This is a view kind of looking from the Corwin Street side. So the side facing you is kind of looking across the employee parking lot to the main entrance, and you can see behind the trees there are the loading docks. So it's a fairly high-level preview. Now I'll hand it over to Vinod, who can briefly cover the traffic elements. This one right here.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Vinod Kalikiri. I'm a senior transportation planner with VHB in Watertown. And as Mr. Citron has mentioned, VHB has provided site civil as well as transportation design services for this project. And I'm here to give you a quick overview of the transportation analysis. A very substantial study has been prepared and filed as part of the application for this project. And as Jake mentioned, it has undergone peer review by an independent peer review consultant brought in by the city. It's been reviewed by the city engineer's office as well as the planning department, which secured the planning board approval at this point. The study itself was quite extensive, went through a lot of data collection. The analysis is all based on pre-COVID conditions, so we wanted to make sure that the data that we use for this analysis is not impacted by COVID effects on traffic flow. So all of the data and the analysis and the findings that's presented in the study is based on pre-COVID data. Again, through the extensive coordination process that we went through both with the city staff as well as with the peer review consultant, we went through numerous iterations of peer review comments, and everything has been addressed to their satisfaction at this point, which led to the planning board approval. Couple of key aspects of the site as it relates to the transportation system. You see the blue dot or the blue asterisk in the middle of the screen. That's the site, 13 Corwin Street, off of Linfield Street, with primary access being provided via Corwin Street. Access to the regional highway system is to the north, as you see, with connections to the site via either First Avenue to the left, to the west of the site, or via Summit Street to the east. So there are two signalized intersections that provide access to the site that bring you up to Centennial Drive, which provides access to the regional highway system. The site is well located in that context. There were several comments and questions related to how the traffic would enter and exit the site, and the intersection of Corwin Street at Linfield Street. We have addressed that through the process. But again, the primary access will be off of Corwin with good connectivity to the regional highway system via First Avenue and Summit Street. There will be no residential deliveries from this site, so this is not a last mile facility. It's actually a freight forwarder service that provides service or deliveries to large industrial manufacturers. And in fact, Forward Air does currently serve a lot of their larger tenants and customers are actually located in Peabody. So a lot of their vehicles do come into Peabody currently. It's just that instead of being served from East Boston, those tenants will be served from this site on Corwin Street. Without getting into too much detail about the numbers, again, a lot of that is built into our traffic study, but we did, for the purpose of this presentation, kind of condensed some of the numbers to kind of provide a comparison of what Forward Air would represent, which is that first column of numbers. If you just focus just on the first two lines, for example, total vehicles on a daily basis and total trailer trucks on a daily basis, and the comparison to either a manufacturing use, 188,000 square foot facility that's there that could be occupied by, today it's occupied partially or, by stall, but it could be occupied by any other manufacturing facility, and it would generate, almost 3 times as much as what Forward Air is anticipated to generate on a daily basis. In terms of trucks, it's comparable between a manufacturing facility and the Forward Air use. But also, if it wasn't Forward Air, any other type of warehouse use would also have a similar type of daily traffic flow, as well as a slightly higher trailer truck flow compared to what Forward Air is proposing. So it's not like we're proposing this facility at a location that has no traffic or that cannot generate future traffic. It's comparable in some respects to other warehouse uses and substantially less impact than what 188,000 square foot manufacturing use could generate at any point in time, given that it's an existing manufacturing facility. So those are all by right or allowed by zoning. I know there's a lot of detail we can get into during Q&A, but this time I'll hand it over to Jake to talk about some of the benefits associated with the project.
We appreciate that it has been many, many years since the stall operation was in full swing. But we would suggest that this soon-to-be abandoned empty industrial site, that serves no good purpose. And then one would consider what are the alternative industrial uses that could and would go on that site. And we would propose and suggest to you that our project, as planned, would be a significant improvement over the alternatives. Our development would be modernizing the site, improving environmental conditions, enhance the buffer zone, provide new landscaping and screening, and we would be doing this without increasing any demands on public services. Construction jobs, improved tax base, traffic would be comparable or less than alternative industrial uses, and we would be making improvements to Corwin and Linfield Street. And then in addition, we would be providing funding for evaluating alternative transportation improvements that would support and address long-standing issues in this corridor. We believe our tenant, Forward Air, and I know my company, Cargo Ventures, we are looking to become a long-standing member of the community, an agent for positive change, and to be supportive of the improvement of this area. So with that, I'd like to thank Council President Melville, your fellow City Council members for giving us the time this evening, and we're delighted to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Attorney Kelty, will you be able to provide the clerk with that PowerPoint if we should grant the recess? She doesn't have that. Can you send the clerk the PowerPoint after this meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, great, thank you. Okay. So just while we ask for public comment, I just want to, and for the folks on Zoom, we're going to start with the folks that are in person, and then we'll work to the folks on Zoom. So if you're on Zoom, we'll get to you during the public comment. I know there's a few people that would wish to speak on this. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this applicant? Anybody wish to speak in favor? Anybody on Zoom wish to speak in favor? Nobody's put their hands up. Okay, is there anybody in the auditorium that wishes to speak in opposition? If you want to come up to the podium. Anybody that wishes to speak in opposition? And when you come up to the podium, just press the button and then state your name and address for the record.
I can see it. I see it.
We just need your name and address for the record.
My name is Richard Medina, Medina, 1-B as in Boston, Laurel Street. And I come here, when I read the petition, I said I had to come down and speak on this issue. I hope you have patience because my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And I hope, I don't see a big crowd here, so I don't expect any outburst, and I hope a lot of civility. I'm not a young man anymore. It was easier when I wore a younger man's clothes when I spoke years ago. For the new counselor, the new counselors, for the new counselors, thank you, Tom. I'd like to put this into historic perspective. Back in 1984, Summit Terminals up there in the industrial park petitioned, requested a rezoning of Linfield Street to allow their terminal to come have access to Linfield Street. That portion of Linfield Street is across from, I call it TJ's, it used to be Charlie's Little Market, 122 Linfield. At that time, that property was an empty field which just had piles of gravel. And the neighbors at that time, we had a hearing on August 27th, 1984. Now, do you remember where you were on August 27th, 1984? Well, I was right here on August 27th, 1984, with a group of neighbors. We petitioned the council at that time, and in their wisdom, a motion by Councilor Sososmo, God bless his soul, and Evans, they denied that request, and that the vote was 10-1 with one absent. They supported the neighbors who didn't want a truck terminal coming through Linfield Street. That, you may wonder what happened to that property. That property was developed and is now Alexandra Road and Travis Terrace. Some 16 homes were built on that property. 16 families live in that property, which was zoned residential. Every 4th of July, they have a block party, and they have music and dancing and have a heck of a time. And they're celebrating the pursuit of happiness. And I listen to that from my neighborhood, and I say, God bless them. But it was that council that stood firm at that time. Okay, Kerwin Street. Right there was Remus Leather Factory, which was non-conforming use, and it processed fleshings from hides, and they turned it into gelatin. They would have a railroad freight car pull in, and that freight car was loaded with the fleshings from hides. Welcome to the city of the tanners. When they opened that freight car that had been simmering in the hot sun, the stink from that fleshings would permeate the whole neighborhood. You could not open your window on a summer day without smelling that aroma, and it stunk to high heaven. We petitioned the neighbors we asked the Board of Health, and after 2 or 3 years of complaints, that company decided it was easier to move their production to Woburn. That property was later rezoned to business. Many neighbors opposed that, as well as I did. But the council at that time voted to approve. Now there is Stonewood and the other businesses, Newhall, small businesses that people visit, earn a living, etc. My basic concern is public safety. If Kerwin Street is a narrow street, if you drive up there, you can barely put 2 cars. And I don't know if they're going to, if they want access to Kerwood Street. You got the 18-wheel rigs side by side. I don't know how they're going to get by that narrow Kerwin Street. It was probably a house path into the junkyard years ago. My other concerns would be turning into Linfield Street. And if you've ever seen these rigs turn, they don't turn like a car. They go out, and then the cab turns, and then the trailer turns with it. Those trailer trucks would take across Linfield Street, and they would block Linfield Street either way they're going. Every day I hear the sirens going up Linfield Street. And Mr. Councilor Turcotte, you must hear them also. They're going to the maybe most of them I think are going to the Jewish Rehabilitation Facility that's up there. Those trucks, those ambulances are almost every day. The fire department and the police. Another of my concern is the schools, the school buses. Linfield Street, you got the South School. You got the South School going down. You get buses loaded of kids going up and down Linfield Street during the school year. You got a playground, Radin Road, right across where Kerwin Street meets Linfield Street, and then right directly across is the major entrance into Radin Road. During the summer, kids are playing softball. I can hear them from my house, laughing, screaming, yelling, having a hell of a time. I can see it. I can imagine a trailer truck coming out when some kid's coming out a little excited, excited with their game. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, my eyes. The playground, joggers. Linfield Street is notorious for joggers. I don't know why, but up and down joggers. Cyclists, like they're going to do the French tour. They're up and down Linfield Street. Pedestrians, people walking on a nice summer day, spring day, up and down Linfield Street. Last summer, I saw Councilor Barry Osborne and his wife and their 2 grandchildren walking up and down Linfield Street. So Linfield Street is a residential area. In October, we get Halloween. Those of you who don't live around that area, Linfield Street becomes a parking lot. The lights on County, they're backed up. They're normal backed up on a normal day, but come Halloween, you can't get out of your street. Let's see, snowbanks. Besides being a narrow street, just imagine when the snow comes. Jobs. Now, I oppose that development, but those people who work there might be impacted by this. I thought some of those people would be here tonight. But you can imagine yourself. I see people at Stonewood. I know Stonewood's closed right now, but I assume it will be open. But they eat outside. Al fresco, I don't know what they call that, al fresco. I can imagine a diesel truck coming up and down that street with the big stack pipe and exhaust going out. I don't know if you can picture it in your mind, but I can. And those people having their lunch with their family and enjoying a beer and a nice white wine. All of a sudden, that fumes of diesel come in and cover them. And they breathe it in. And they say, what a place I'm never coming back here again. The other businesses that are in that area, their employees are going to suck in that diesel fuel through the air conditioning and all that. Those people may eventually lose their customers. I know I wouldn't be going back. And those people might lose their jobs. So, in closing, there's one last thing. I remember Councilor Tom Walsh proposed limiting truck traffic on Linfield Street. And I'm trying to remember if the council passed that proposal. But that was one of the concerns at the council at that time, that Linfield Street had too many damn pardon, too many darn trucks up and down Linfield Street. And Tom Walsh proposed that we'd limit it. Now, I don't know if the council can do that, but these are my concerns. And I appreciate your patience and your civility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Anybody else in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Well, if you could come up to the podium and just state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Mary Ann Gaudette. I live on 90 Linfield Street, which is the corner of County and Linfield, and I'm extremely concerned about the number of trucks that will be coming. Right now, Summit Street is unbelievable with all the cars coming. And Mr. Medina made a good point with turning at Corwin and Linfield. What happens with the intersection of Linfield and Summit?
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak in opposition? Anybody else in the audience wish to speak? Yep. Just please state your name and address for the record.
For the record, my name's Russell Donovan, 12 Quail Road, which is probably about an eighth of a mile down from the proposal. As the earlier speakers spoke, we've had history on Linfield Street and Summit Street of traffic. I think the city councilors are no strangers to traffic if you live in Ward 1. If you're anywhere near Summit or County Street and Linfield Street during the rush hour, when people are coming home from Boston, they use Centennial Drive and Summit Street as a cut-through instead of going to Lowell Street. So they can go to Salem, Marblehead, Beverly, wherever they might go. Traffic has always been a concern. Richie Medina, the earlier speaker, mentioned Tom Walsh, councilor at the time, was looking to reduce truck traffic on Linfield Street. To that point, the city council of the city posted signs for truck traffic on Centennial Drive to divert the trucks onto Centennial Drive instead of going down Linfield Street. Just recently in the Wall Street Journal of February 27th this year, there was an article about trucks. Trucks deliver surge of goods, tearing up the neighborhoods. In that article, it talked about what the damage large trucks do to the roadways. I think I sent an email to a number of the councilors the Wall Street Journal article. Hopefully they read it. But in it, I'd like to read a couple of points, if you would. The damage done from a single axle load of 18,000 pounds is roughly equivalent to 5,000 passenger vehicles. One trip on one truck is equal to 5,000 cars. What we're proposing is a 61 dock facility. In order for them to be profitable, they have to deliver and receive a lot of trucks. And remember, their product is moving material. Trucks come in and trucks go out all day long. The proposal, as I saw in the special permit, was from 6 a.m. to 11:30 at night. And as with special permits and hours of operation, I've been here many years, as you know, the councils, after they get a special permit and invested a lot of money in Peabody, they come back for changes in operation, be more profitable. Otherwise, they'll threaten to leave again, or they're not making their profit. Think about it. 6 a.m. in a residential neighborhood, more trucks, 18-wheelers will be coming out of the airport, coming down Linfield Street or Summit Street, and they'll be leaving at 6:30 or whatever it takes to unload the trucks.
to go back and get another load. Linfield Street is backed up all the time. Used to be occasional, but it's all the time now. This is a proposal for a special permit. A trucking terminal is not a matter of right, as you people know. Warehouses are. As in the presentation, they used the term warehouse. As you know, with the proposal coming up before us with Amazon, whether it's a trucking terminal or a warehouse, verbiage has meaning. This is a trucking terminal. It is not a matter of right. A number of years ago, the city council had a problem on Oak Street and Mason Street. The neighbors were complaining that at 2 o'clock in the morning, trucks were making noise down in their neighborhood. And I always remember Councilor Liakos made a comment at that meeting that they had a matter of right in Industrial Park to operate those hours, and there was nothing the city council could do. The neighbors then complained there was nothing they could do because it was a matter of right. Here, the city council has the power, the authority, and the right to protect the neighborhood. It is a single-family residential neighborhood predominantly throughout that area. The old industrial park are gone. We have residential overlays all over the city now because we want families in Peabody. We don't want to become a trucking capital of the North Shore. This is a mistake. They're investing a lot of time and effort to get you people persuaded to put this terminal in. The neighbors are trying to persuade you the opposite. It's not the right thing to do to a residential neighborhood. 150, 200 trucks a day down Linfield Street from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they have to change what they bring in, they have to ship out. They don't produce a product, they just move material. So they take a bunch of big trucks and a lot of little trucks move that material out. So what they say about traffic in Linfield Street now, just think what it'll be later with this terminal there. It'll be a big mistake, and as a neighbor, I oppose it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public in the auditorium wish to speak in opposition? Anybody else in the auditorium wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we will check Zoom. Anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak in opposition could raise your hand. Nobody there? What about Ann Quinn? Does anybody on Zoom wish to speak? If you want to unmute yourself. Nobody's raising their hand currently. According to the clerk, just wanted to remind me, you can only raise your hand. You can't unmute yourself because but if anybody on Zoom wishes to speak, if they could raise their hand. Okay, nobody's raising their hand. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to make a motion to receive under suspension of the rules late communication 1, 2, 5, and 6 to go on record as opposition. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. You heard the motion from Councilor Welton regarding late communications. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the petitioner's attorney had mentioned on the onset of this presentation, this is a pretty lengthy proposal. This is a lot of information for the council to digest, and as such, it was requested if they could have the opportunity to present this evening, answer any questions from the public, answer any questions from councilors, but did not wish to have a vote this evening. I did have that discussion with the petitioner and his attorney, and I will be, after we have comments and questions from our councilors, I will be making a motion to recess this public hearing, just so my fellow colleagues understand what my process hopes to be. With that, I know many of our fellow councilors have a lot of other questions about this proposal. So for the time being, I will allow my fellow councilors to ask any questions and seek clarification, and I will withhold my comments for the current. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Walton. Any other councilors wishing to have so Councilor Gould, Councilor Manny Martin, and so Councilor Gould and then Councilor Manny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the applicant that has looked at investing in Peabody. Thank you to the residents for their opposition, and that's what we're all about, is giving an opportunity for people to come and voice their opinion. I grew up on the end of Linfield Street. My daughter lives behind Frangus's Market, as Richie said, Newhall Place. Officer Hawkins is a neighbor just across the way. I know the traffic. I'm there 3-4 times a week, and it is getting worse. Councilor Turco lives on Linfield Street. He knows how bad it is. I rightfully could never, ever, ever vote for allowing a truck terminal to have their only means of access, Linfield Street. If they were able to negotiate, as has been discussed, having an access road through the industrial center, industrial park, then I could possibly consider it. But at this point, I'm dead against having any more truck traffic on Linfield Street. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Manny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is before us this evening under 1.5.1 nonconformance under our zoning. And with that, it's up to the council to determine whether, after a public hearing, we determine that it is under nonconforming. They can't just present it to us saying it's nonconforming. It's up to us to determine after a public hearing if it falls under 1.5.1 nonconformance. So having heard from the neighbors and reviewing this application, I determine individually that it does not meet nonconformance 1.5.1 because it is not similar in 1.5.1C1 character. Tractor trailers clamoring up and down that residential area would be a change in character. C2, it is not similar in intensity of use. It's much more an intense use than the previous use. As Mr. Donovan has said, that the weight of the tractor trailers that will be going in and out all day long into the wee hours of the night is a much more intensity of use. C4, it is not similar in the effect on the adjacent properties. We've heard from the residents the effect that it has on their properties, and they're horrified at the idea of this trucking terminal and its use and its increased intensity of use, ruining the character of the neighborhood and the effect on their property. And lastly, it is as to be not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming use or structure or both. And that is in our zoning, that is nonconformance. And again, it is up to the council to determine whether this falls under a pre-existing nonconforming use. And simply by reading the ordinance, it clearly to me is not, does not fall within pre-existing nonconforming. For those reasons, it is not similar in character, it is not similar in intensity of use, it is not similar in the effect in the adjacent property, and it is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming use, structure, or both. So frankly, I wouldn't even be in favor of a recess this evening. I would be in support of voting to deny this because it doesn't meet our zoning, and it doesn't fall under non-conforming use for all the reasons that I've listed. I'm sure there's, I have plenty of other questions and issues that if we continue to go on, I will add, but at the point of, I'm ready to just deny it outright for those reasons. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Turco, then Councilor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I keep calling you Mr. Chairman. So yes, I do live in the neighborhood, and I appreciate my neighbors. And as far as those late communications, most of them came from Linfield Street neighbors. So I appreciate you all being here, and I appreciate the commentary. But I share Councilor Manning Martin's sentiments. I happen to be, I don't know how I missed this at the beginning. I guess I didn't thoroughly read the cover page. But as far as the non-conformances, it's, and I'm going to, through you to Councilor Kelty, I can't tell through the way this newspaper ad is if you're eliminating the nonconformance or if you're extending the nonconformance. And with that question, these seem to be ZBA like setbacks, and I mean, we've done nonconformance for use, but I don't think I've ever done a nonconformance for a front yard landscape and a front yard setback. It seems like you might be trying to skip over a board here, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts on why this is written the way it is.
Attorney Kelty.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer that. We're here to seek a special permit to allow a truck terminal in an IP zone. That's what the zoning ordinance provides. The business about nonconformity, we're not here, Stolf USA is not, we're not here under 151. I know the ad suggests that. I think that's something of a typo based on my application. There was a effort to utilize some of the setbacks with a prior user. A company that came to town had employed a different engineering firm. We are taking advantage or doing nothing that's non-conforming. We therefore did not need to be before the ZBA. We did go to the Conservation Commission. We did go to site plan review, but there is nothing about our application, and I'm sorry that the ad reads the way it does, but we are here to seek a special permit for one thing, that's the use of the property as a trucking terminal.
Councilor Turco.
Yeah, so I understand, Jack, but it's written several times throughout this advertisement. So I really think that the advertisement itself is null and void. You may have to withdraw and resubmit, because this is what went out to the neighbors as a nonconformance. We had a city councilor address issues regarding a nonconformance that she obviously put a lot of time into, and it's not what you're here for. So it's written, I mean, you say a typo, it's written 4 times, nonconformance. So I think this is you withdraw and resubmit.
It also, in the advertisement, suggests that we're asking for a special permit for a trucking terminal. So I believe it's properly advertised. But if you've...
I mean, I would disagree, but, we could ask for opinion from the city solicitor if people would like, but I'd say the simpler methodology is you made a mistake on the advertisement. It's quite clear that you did, and, I mean, Jack, I mean, read it, front yard landscape area. So you have residents that got this in a newspaper and got through notification that you're discussing landscape areas and front yard setbacks and nonconformances in multiple locations that again are not use variances. These are ZBA variances. So it's just a bit confusing to me. I believe it was probably confusing to the residents. I think that should be clarified. This is what's on the record with us that we'll be voting on. I'm not going to vote on something that was presented us that you just said none of this exists. So maybe Council Walton, an opinion from the city solicitor, or if you'd like to recommend to Attorney Kelty that he resubmit with the accurate advertising.
Councilor Turco? Okay. Just a point of information, the advertisement comes from the body of the application, so it's within the, as Councilor Turco referenced, it is an application issue. It's not an advertisement issue. I just want to be clear on that. Those are 2 separate things. Councilor Peach?
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate, the residents coming here today to express their concerns. I appreciate the applicant taking the time to present this to us, and you did have a neighborhood meeting that I was able to attend a few months ago, where this was presented to many neighbors, and I was there able to attend and to hear a resounding no from the neighborhood. I grew up on Linfield Street. My parents still reside there. I am dealing with that traffic 3 to 4 times a day, as Councilor Gould mentioned. It's not a safe street as it stands. It's not safe for kids to cross Linfield Street as it stands. To add an additional 60-plus tractor trailers a day going both ways, so 90 trips of a tractor trailer driving by the bus stop that the kids get off, the park, multiple parks, schools. If we can't figure out a way to access this space, not from Linfield Street, I cannot support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Peach. Any other councilors? Councilor Gamache?
Yes, through you to the petitioner. Is there another access point that you have looked at other than Linfield Street?
There is an access point which would involve the pursuit of the railroad bed that runs parallel to Linfield Street and perpendicular to Corwin. If that were to be able to be pursued, and we were actually able to, if the city were able to acquire that property and develop it, we would benefit greatly for that. That's why in our site plan review, we had offered funds in order to study the availability of that land, how it could be engineered to be utilized as an access. And so, yes, we do have a slide that would show where that road is and how it would effectively link you from Corwin Street directly to one of the cul-de-sacs that comes off of Centennial. I think it's Technology Drive. There are 2 cul-de-sacs. I think this is Technology. And as such, we have provided what I term as we've offered in our site plan review. We have offered seed money that would go to trying to find a way, trying to develop this access road, trying to acquire it from the railroad. And I'm hopeful that that would work and that my client is greatly interested in that and would continue to work with the city in terms of providing services and skills to try to get that land under control and to move this project forward. If the council feels strongly that it should be re-advertised, the reference to the existing nonconformity was a reference to the front yard at Stahl USA. We're rebuilding the entire thing, so we will not be nonconforming as to any aspect of it. So we don't need to seek a permit from the ZBA or otherwise. We will build in accordance with the zoning ordinance, and if the council feels strongly that the advertisement should be rerun so as to remove the references to nonconformity, I guess we could certainly do that. I'd be interested in what we would give it as a hearing date.
Councilor Gamache?
Yeah, I think that if you listen to all the people that have been here tonight, they're all opposed to it, primarily because of traffic on Linfield Street.
Correct.
And I think that, and I'm just speaking for myself, I would feel much more comfortable having you proceed with an alternative route that would not go Linfield Street, that would allow this to go into an area that is already utilized for industrial use. Instead of using Corwin Street, however you figure out another access egress into the rear of the property, stay off Linfield Street, And I think it would behoove you to come back with that type of a solution to at least show that there won't be any Linfield Street traffic. And all the testimony tonight is Linfield Street. So, and I too, Mr. Medina, grew up in South Peabody. I remember the stink of the leather factories that were there for a long time. You couldn't open your windows. So sometimes what you wish for and you get are two different things. But I would strongly suggest, Counselor, that you look at that alternative. I think that that is 99.9% of your problem right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gamache. Any other councilors? Councilor Manning Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the other portion, little percent you left out would be the application is flawed. Yes, and what I also don't want to happen is for the council to lose sight of the fact that we are the one that determines whether it falls under 1.5.1. It's not just an applicant coming forward and saying, this is under pre-existing non-conforming. That's up to us to decide after a public hearing. So I just want to, moving forward, remind councilors that that's the case. But the application is flawed, so I feel that, you know, fruits of the tainted tree moving forward to continue with a flawed application. I don't think I've ever seen this. So, Mr. President, to you.
Thank you, Councilman Martin. Any other councilors? Councilor Welton?
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I request a 2-minute recess for procedural clarification with the clerk, please?
You may. 2-minute recess. All right, councilors, we're going to come back to order. All right, we're back from recess. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe the petitioner's attorney would like to speak, and I will yield the floor to him.
I would respectfully request that the City Council allow us to withdraw without prejudice, resubmit our application with slight revisions thereto, and re-advertise, and I believe the date would be possibly 3/24.
If all go, the clerk is just clarifying. If everything gets in, yeah. Councilor Walton, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move to allow the petitioner to withdraw without prejudice and resubmit the application with the revisions he discussed. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor Welton. Any discussion on the motion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subsequent to conversation regarding alternative access opportunities, I would like to read the following motion. I would move to request community development reach out to Pan Am Railway, the owner of the formerly active railway adjacent to the Stall USA building at 13 Corin Street and parallel to Linfield Street, regarding the possibility of acquiring this land and determining the associated cost of purchasing for the sake of exploring an alternative roadway to service the property at 13 Corwin Street. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor Walton. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. That concludes this. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 5, reports of committee. Finance Committee Chair, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee of the City Council met earlier this evening. Present for the committee were Councilors Gamache, Gould, Manning Martin, Turco, and myself as chair. Also present were Councilors Welton, Peach, Daigle, O'Neill, and Melville. There were 5 items on the agenda. The first 3 items on the agenda all generally dealt with the establishment of a proposed children's museum. So these items were taken by the committee somewhat as a group. So item A was an ordinance amendment to Peabody Museum Department, and the second item B, was supplemental information regarding proposed Peabody Children's Museum, and the third item was Peabody/Curious City Children's Museum lease agreement, 10 Main Street. The mayor presented this package of information, and supporting the mayor were Director of Finance, Mr. Gingras, Director of Community Development, Mr. Bellavance, City Solicitor, Attorney Khan, also individuals that have been active on this, Tim Brown, Martha Holden, Camille Bartlett, and Mark Whiting. Also present for the proceeding were from Viceroy Properties were Carl Valetti and Sandra Capo. The Martha Holden, Ms. Holden spoke to the existence of the pop-up museum that had taken place as sort of proof of concept, the Curious City operation that ran at the George Peabody House for 42 weeks of programming, and indicated that it had a significant regional draw. There was some input from Mr. Brown about anecdotal reports from increased businesses at two area eating establishments, and that he would expect the same type of incremental or beneficial effect to the businesses on Main Street should this proposal move forward. There was a video that kind of covered some, provided some of the history on the Curious City pop-up operation, as well as a view of the proposed new space at 10 Main Street. The mayor had indicated or touched on some of the points of the lease that he has negotiated with the property owners, and has indicated that he believes the 5-year lease would be a risk-limiting factor. He indicated there's been a $400,000 grant received from the Community Development Authority for this initiative, and the potential exists for money to be released from a $1.2 million line item in an economic bond bill that would not come in a lump sum, that likely to come over time, and that our legislative delegation is working on that. He had indicated that he anticipates putting in place a structure similar to the senior center that would have a combination of full-time staff, part-time staff, a board of directors, and a friends group that would assist with fundraising. Director of Finance, Ms. Gingras, reviewed the pro forma that was presented to the committee in the package, and generally had indicated that it would be in the ballpark of $550,000 per year operating, and that the goal of the operation would be to be revenue neutral. He also indicated that in terms of structuring this going forward, that he would come back, should this be successful, that he would come back to establish a revolving fund, and that's how it would be dealt with administratively within the budget, similar to other revolving funds that currently exist today, such as at Tilly's Farm. There were a number of questions and comments from councilors around the area of risk and the various cost elements associated with this. There were also some questions and concerns about this being a city department versus the possibility of it being a nonprofit or a 501c3, and how other children's museums are run around the region. There was also a strong sentiment from the committee and other councilors that spoke that were not on the committee about a desire to have a kind of an evaluation period such that there would be sufficient time to accumulate data to do a meaningful review, and the consensus seemed to be that that would be at about year 3. The mayor agreed with that, and also agreed that there might be the possibility of transitioning this away from a city department to a nonprofit or 501c3, as had been done in at least one other example in one other community, but that doing it this way initially was the fastest way to get it off the ground, and it was believed by the team presenting that there's a window of opportunity to get this done before another community might come in and do a similar thing, or create a similar destination type operation in a neighboring community. So with that, after the considerable debate on that, there were a number of motions made. First motion was by Councilor Gould, and that was to authorize the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Viceroy Capital Management LLC on a proposed lease agreement for the property located at 10 Main Street to operate the City of Peabody / Curious City Children's Museum for a 5-year term. That motion passed the committee by a vote of 3-2, and I now bring that to the full council for consideration. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
No.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-2.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next motion that was made by Councilor Gould was to advertise an ordinance amending Article 3, Departments, by adding Division 8, Children's Museum Department, and that the text of that be in accordance with substantially as the language attached to his communication from His Honor the Mayor dated December 2nd, 2021. That motion passed in committee by a vote of 3-2, and I now bring that for consideration to the full council. Mr. President, so moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
No.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-2.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Gould made a third motion, which was to advertise an ordinance amending Section 28-21 entitled Schedule of Compensation for Full-Time Positions Not Subject to Collective Bargaining, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Peabody as follows. Section 1, the ordinance establishing a compensation and classification plan is hereby amended as follows. The Code of the City of Peabody, as adopted on January 23rd, 1969, and amended, is hereby further amended by adding Section 18-21 to the ordinance establishing a compensation and classification plan as follows. Executive Director, salary maximum $81,168. Assistant Director, salary maximum $51,689. Section 2, all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect upon the passage or as otherwise provided by law. Mr. President, that motion passed in committee by a vote of 3-2, and I now bring it for consideration of the full council. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
No.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-2.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was then a motion made by Councilor Manning Martin, which the motion was for a review of operations to be conducted at year 3 to evaluate future viability of the Children's Museum operation. That motion passed the committee unanimously. I now bring it to consideration of the full council. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. And any discussion, Councilor Welton?
Just on the motion, thank you, Mr. President. On the motion, I believe is a co-motion with Councilor Peach as well.
Councilor McGinn?
I
don't know how you do a
only left that
co-motion
off
if you're not in the
because
committee.
she's not on the committee, so.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor Welton. So you heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item on the agenda was item D, which is an Oppa update. That was presented by Mr. Gingras, and he largely reviewed the document that was submitted to the council, whereby he had indicated that Oppa grants received thus far have been in an amount of $10,539,975, that there has been spending on the fiscal 2020 general fund deficit in an amount of $2,175,019, the fiscal year 20 rink deficit of $111,890, fiscal year 2021 revenue replacement of $562,703, fiscal year 2022 revenue replacement $4,580,000, excuse me, strike that, $4,580,000, and fiscal year 2022 Mountain Terrace Granite Street drainage in an amount of $404,752, leaving a current balance from the first allocation of Oppa funds of $2,705,611. That there will be a second round of funding received in an amount of $10,539,974, so that the total anticipated available future use funding would be $13,245,585. It was briefly discussed that there is a cap that exists for the use of funds on revenue replacement. Peabody's cap is estimated will be in the $12.4 million range. There has been in excess of $7 million allocated to revenue replacement or funding of deficits generally related to COVID, leaving about $4.9 million that could be allocated to revenue replacement in the out years. There were, although there's great interest within the committee on this topic, in the interest of time, we've left it in committee, and we think that it's going to warrant further periodic review. So that is a report of progress, and we should anticipate that there will be additional reports on this going forward, Mr. President. Next item on the agenda was transfer of funds, CPC document preservation vital records in an amount of $33,668. There was a motion that was presented to the committee by Mr. Gingras. There was a motion by Councilor Gould to approve transfer request from account numbers 270-0000-33022 in an amount of $33,668, CPC Historic Preservation, to account number 270-1811-58563, 2022-000346, an amount of $33,668, to CPC Document Preservation Vital Records. That motion passed the committee unanimously, Mr. President. I now bring it for consideration to the full council. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache. Yes. Turco. Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last item on the agenda was the item F, transfer of funds, fiscal 22 legal budget, an amount of $75,000. That was presented to the committee by Mr. Gingras, Director of Finance, which was to support the city's legal budget in order to fund a post-arbitration employment settlement agreement. There was a motion made by Councilor Gould to approve the transfer from budget reserve, account number 10013205741, an amount of $75,000 to FY 2022 legal budget, account number 1005, strike that, 1001510531114, an amount of $75,000. That motion passed the committee unanimously, Mr. President. I now bring it for consideration to the full council. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn?
That completes the report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Councilor Gould.
No motions, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 8D, a communication from resident Tracy Valetti, looking at Peabody becoming a green community. As background, we tried to do this in 2008, but because we had a municipal light plant, we were not eligible. And then the state tweaked the law in 2011, and we attempted to become a green community then, but PMLP was not interested in participating. So evidently, the law has been tweaked yet again, and Ms. Valetti is hoping to get a discussion on Peabody becoming a green community in 2022. So with that, I would like to refer 8D to the Ad hoc Committee on Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy for that discussion. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor Manning Martin. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote, Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you. Also for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Committee, motion to receive under suspension of the rules, item 8F, and refer that to the same committee. For reference, it is a communication from CONCOM Chair Stuart Lazarus, hoping to generate some discussion regarding the Peabody launching a net zero climate action planning process, and get an update from Community Development Director Kurt Bellavance, if he could attend the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy and address that matter. So moved.
You heard the motion from Councilor Manning Martin. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote, Councilor.
Thank you. And finally, under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 8E, a communication from Sudi Smoller, who was kind enough to, she was a member of the Charter Commission, and she was kind enough to revamp and go through and revamp all the medieval language to help us out on the charter updates. So where would you like me to refer that?
Committee of the Whole.
So I would like to refer her work to the Committee of the Whole. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor Manning Martin. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote, Councilor.
That is all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many residents have expressed to me, and as I experienced firsthand, we have a significant issue at the intersection of Driscoll and Margin Street. Over the last 3 weeks, I've witnessed the aftermath of several accidents and countless near accidents that occur there, and I think the uptick in activity there is due to St. John's, which has relocated their pre-K program to the St. Thomas School, which is wonderful, and I love to see that school being used again, but it's just caused some traffic issues. So I'd like to make a motion to ask Captain Richards to take a look at the area and incidents that have occurred there and determine and report back to us the next steps as far as a traffic study.
Thank you. You heard the motion from Councilor Peach. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? To vote, Councilor Peach.
No further motions.
Thank you. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to receive under suspension of the rules, item 8A, special permit application from Christine Lander, 99 Lynn Street, and schedule a special permit hearing. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote, Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, co-motion with Councilor Turco. Move to have the crosswalks in front of the school repainted as weather permits. So moved. Brown School.
Thank you, Councilor.
The only school in my ward. The only school in my ward, Dave. My apologies, bro.
Yeah. All in
Long
favor,
night.
any opposed? It's a vote. Counselor Welton?
Thank you, Mr. President. And actually, just kind of a question. Item 8I is in reference to the special permit hearing that we requested to be withdrawn without prejudice. So I'm not sure how best to receive this. Just receive it or receive and refer to forthcoming submission.
Yeah, we would just receive it, Counselor, and then this would be part of the packet.
Okay, great.
Next hearing.
Move to receive item 8I. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed to the vote? Counselor Welton?
No further motions this evening. Thank you.
Counselor O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to adopt as advertised 10B, which is a bond order for replacement of the West Memorial School's gymnasium roof. So moved.
Thank you, Counselor. We're going to do a roll call. You heard the motion under suspension of the rules for item 10B. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould,
Yes.
Manning Martin, Peach,
Yes.
Welton,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn, Gamache.
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Counselor O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. President. No further motions, but I did want to just remind fellow councilors and the general public that we'll be having a Legal Affairs Committee hearing on Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m. to review the response to the city's request for proposals to purchase 10 Lowell Street, which was submitted by Michael Voto. So 6 o'clock Tuesday.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. On suspension of the rules, move to receive items 7A, B, and C and refer to finance. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Counselor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. On suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8B and set up a public hearing. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Counselor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. On suspension of the rules, move to receive item 9A and set up a public hearing. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Oh, Councilor McGinn, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
I
President.
thought I referred it back. I apologize. I was counting what we got left.
Under suspension of the rules, move to adopt as advertised bond order Wilson Square upgrades in an amount of $1 million. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor. You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. We're going to do a roll call. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Gould,
Yes.
Manning Martin, Peach,
Yes.
Welton, O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to advertise and amend an amendment to ordinance section 19-81, park and prohibited handicap zone, to add Holton Street in front of and along the property line of 5 Holton Street. So moved.
You heard the motion from Councilor McGinn. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. No further motions.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gamache.
Yes, under suspension of the rules, move to receive 8H and set up a public hearing for a special permit.
You heard the motion from Councilor Gamache. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Councilor Gamache.
Yes, under item 9B, utility contractor's license, JET Excavation, 8 Richardson Road, Burlington, Mass. Move approval, all papers being in order.
You heard the motion from Councilor Gamache. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Gamache. Councilor Daigle.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Under, I guess, suspension of the rules, maybe not, move to receive item 8C, Hoyle Construction, 68 Prospect, and set up for a special permit hearing.
The motion from Councilor Daigle. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. And do we need to receive item 8G?
We have AG. Yep, we need to receive
do.
that. So under suspension of the rules, please receive item AG.
And
You heard the motion from Councilor Daigle.
On the motion?
Councilor McGinn. We should probably refer this to
I
community.
think it needs to go to
industrial and community
industrial. Yeah,
development.
there's a request for a presentation, right?
Yeah.
What,
Industrial and community development.
ICD.
So the motion would be to receive this under suspension of the rules and forward to industrial and community development, the subcommittee ICD.
So
You heard the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Daigle?
No further motions unless there's anything we haven't reviewed that I need to address.
We got everything.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I just one, and I'd entertain a motion. We did get 10C.
That was a different one. He said Holton Street. That was Holton Street.
Councilor McGinn, when you did, I believe 10C was, you took 10C. That was your motion, if I remember. No, you did you did Holton Street. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So we do have it, Councilor, if you could read off 10C and we'll receive that.
Motion to receive item 10C and approve, subject to all papers being in order.
So, yeah, ready for council adoption, an ordinance amending section 19-81, parked prohibited handicap zone, the code of the city of Peabody, 11R North Central Street. That you'll be helping out our Ward 3 councilor.
Thank you.
For that one. Thank you.
Thank you for reading it.
All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. I had one item that I'd entertain a motion. I've been discussing with Sharon Cameron regarding issues with trash storage, and she has some language for a future ordinance that I would ask that the council request that she forward that information to the council for review. I'd entertain a motion to request that from her. Thank you, Councilor Gamache. Has informed me that she did not believe we received the late communication from the mayor, late item 4, that we would receive this and just one moment. I think this would go to the Legal Affairs Subcommittee. Yeah, receive this in late 4 and forward to Legal Affairs Subcommittee. All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So move, we are adjourned.